Well, hello everybody and welcome to the Irish Boxing Forum. We're on to episode 4 now and I'm Steve Wellings from Irish Boxing Review. And I'm joined today by Jonny Stapleton from irishboxing.com. Jonny, how's it going?
Not too bad, Steve, and yourself?
I am very well, thank you, Jonny. Thanks for coming on. Did you enjoy the boxing on Saturday night?
Definitely. I think that probably topped Bernard Dunn, maybe not the Cordoba fight, but the pre-fight atmosphere, definitely.
Yeah, it was
superb
atmosphere.
I've ever been at,
yeah. Not quite sure about topping Cordoba, like you say, but it was getting
not the
close.
fight, but the pre-fight atmosphere and such.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you would have had that style of fight where up and down and win it in that manner, well, I think that would have been through the roof even more.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, Jonny. And Derek McKenna as well is on from irishboxing.com. Derek, how are you?
I'm good, Steve. Exhausted after the weekend, but still buzzing from it as well.
Excellent stuff, man. It's great to hear you guys. Niall Doran can't join us this week, but we are hoping to get Damien McKinley on later if we can. And anybody else who wants to have a chat about the Frampton fight or anything Irish boxing related. So there's only one place to start, really, guys, and that was what we've just alluded to there. Saturday night in the Odyssey Arena, Belfast. Carl Frampton, first successful defence of his IBF Super Bantamweight title, the 122-pound title, against Chris Avalos. And I'm not afraid to say that I just got it completely wrong, to be honest. I thought that Avalos was going to put up a real test. He was going to extend Frampton the 12 rounds, and it was going to be a points decision. Now, I was sort of wavering a little bit on the night. I was saying, maybe Frampton's going to stop him late, maybe 10th or 11th. As it happened, Carl never even let Chris Avalos get into the fight. His timing, his footwork was superb. As soon as he realised that Avalos couldn't hurt him and that Avalos was relatively slow, he was just picking him off at range, left hooks, right hands, and just giving him a steady beating, really, Jonny. I mean, what more can you say? Avalos was a creditable challenger. Like I said at the press conference, I think he was a stronger first challenge than Rigondeaux, Quigg and Santa Cruz had with their titles. I mean, Frampton was just superb.
The only way I can kind of describe it is if Avalos is world class and the way he made it to two mandatory positions proves he's one of the best super bantamweights out there, has to be deemed a world level fighter. But then Frampton is just special because, as you said, he didn't let Avalos into the fight. He looked stronger, his timing was impeccable, his footwork was brilliant, his sort of fight knowledge, even the manner in which he came to the ring, he was focused. He just seemed to be supremely confident he was going to do a job, and Avalos came trying to rattle Frampton during fight week. It didn't work. I just think Frampton, we probably have a special fighter on our hands, someone who can bring us to different levels, big fights in America, maybe even, depending how the opponents that are out there can even nearly beat pound for pound rating. He has to be special if Avalos is world class. It's the only way I can look at it.
Mm-hmm. Avalos, Derek, he came to town, as Jonny said there, and he tried to rattle Frampton even on the night. Whenever they touched gloves, I think he said something along the lines of, "It's only you and me there, boy." But I think correct, yeah. Avalos could have done with his ma in there with him to help out. It was to his detriment that it was only him and Frampton, unfortunately.
Yeah, like I must admit, I was a little bit nervous going into the fight because, like all kind of, we're journalists and we're supposed to be a little bit impartial, but at the end of the day, we're still Irish fight fans. And it's easy at times to get a little bit biased when you're a fight fan and kind of overestimate how good your fighter is. So, when Carl was going in against someone like Avalos, I must admit I was a little bit nervous in case we were kind of underestimating him and expecting Carl to walk through him. But I was pleasantly surprised that Carl dealt with him so well. If you just look at the reaction afterwards on the likes of Twitter and all the boxing pundits everywhere, kind of talking about how good Carl really is now. I think that was the marker. I think everybody knew how good he was and kind of suspected how good he was. But I think in that fight, we've kind of realised really how good he was, if you get what I'm saying. So, it was enjoyable to watch, and Carl literally dismantled him in there. He was winning every round, and the referee stopped it at the right time. Some people were saying at the time that was an early stoppage, but I think when you look back at it, the referee was exactly right to step in, and then the subsequent giving of oxygen kind of proves that it was the right stoppage at the right time.
I was going to ask you about that actually, Derek, and you've just summed it up quite well. I mean, there were question marks about Howard Foster beforehand, especially for myself. Like, I was sort of a little bit wary of Howard because I know he has a tendency to stop the fights a little bit early. I know there is a general tendency with the sort of British boxing referees. You know, they do err on the side of caution a little bit, and I was concerned that if someone was under pressure, that they would get stopped early. But fair play to Howard Foster. I think he timed it just right. Even some respected people were saying to me he might have been a little bit late, but I thought it was about right. He gave Avalos every opportunity to recover. And Avalos' manager at the end, Jonny, whenever I grabbed hold of him, seemed to be annoyed with his fighter, saying that he should have thrown punches and that was the reason why he was stopped. But I mean, how could Avalos throw any punches? He was caught in a complete whirlwind by Frampton. The punches were raining in from all angles. He didn't want to take a knee. He didn't go down. There was only one option for the referee, and that was to stop the fight.
Yeah, he was doing that Amir Khan on drunk, trying to tell a bouncer I'm all right sort of impression. His legs were wobbling, and then he waved Frampton on, but he was gone, and he was going to take clean shots and get hurt. And I think the stoppage was right. And I know beforehand you were saying Steve Foster might jump in if there's pressure there, and especially with the crowd. Frampton being a home fighter, it was always an option, but it wasn't a premature stoppage. It was perfectly timed. Even if he jumped in a little earlier, you probably thought it would have been okay. He wasn't coming back with anything, and he was gone on his feet. Now, fair play to him. He didn't go down, and he showed a bit of toughness. But I even think I think it was the fourth round when he started he stopped coming forward and he was flicking out this jab just to try and keep Frampton off him. I think he tasted the power and he knew he was gone eventually.
I was surprised, Jonny, at how slow Avalos seemed. He seemed quite novice-like for a guy at that sort of level, and Avalos was no fool. We all agreed on that beforehand. He was a tough, world-class operator. He'd got some good wins. He seemed like a reasonable puncher. He'd fought punchers himself. He wasn't afraid to travel. He ticked all the boxes as a challenger, but I was just so surprised that, considering he was a lot taller, he didn't use his height and reach advantages. He didn't get the jab going, and when he did, he was missing the jab, and Carl was drawing him in, and Avalos' head was dropping down, and he was winging away with punches from so early on. He did look so novice-like. Was that just because of the way Frampton dealt with him, or what was your? Did he live up to the hype, Avalos, of what you expected him to be?
Well, I honestly didn't look at it the same way as you, Steve. Like that, I just was blown away that Carl dealt with someone of that level so well. And when you think back, he did it, and Carl alluded to him being slow and such. Was he struggling at the weight? I don't know. He was a couple of ounces over, and they were saying because in California he'd take the last couple of pounds off a lot easier, that he might have to work harder during the week in the cold, freezing, wet Belfast to make the weight. But I didn't even instead of disparaging Avalos' performance, I just thought Carl was amazing, and his footwork and his time, and he just looked a stronger man, even though he, as you say, he was smaller in height. He just bigger in confidence and stature and power. I just thought it was an exceptional display.
I suppose, Jonny, as well. Now, the inevitable question is, what's next? It looks to be like it's going to be Scott Quigg at some point. June was mentioned. We're seeing on Twitter now that it might be sort of September. Either way, it doesn't look like it's going to be in Belfast. It's probably going to be somewhere in England, maybe Manchester. London seems to be quite strongly talked about at maybe joining with another big fight to try and make the bill up. We don't know whether it's going to be on Sky, on ITV. There's so many variables at the moment. I mean, what do you think, Jonny, is going to come next, or what would you like to see come next?
Personally, I would just love Quigg to come to Belfast. I think if you think last week was good, or Saturday was good, Quigg coming to Belfast with all the history, all the talk, it would just be a sensational atmosphere. It'd be, as Derek was saying, he listened to a podcast in America there where they're ranting about the atmosphere in Ireland. Now after that, it'd be through the roof. The atmosphere for that fight would be amazing. Fight week would be amazing, and I think Carl gets to be a hyped fighter, look better, and his profile goes through the roof. I think the Quigg fight's a great fight. People think it's a 50-50, but Carl will more than likely knock him out, look better in probably the biggest fight in Britain this year if Khan and Brook isn't made.
What do you think, Derek? I mean, Scott Quigg was there, wasn't he, on the night? He got interviewed by ITV. He looked a bit like a rabbit in the headlights. But I mean, to be fair to Scott, he sort of does look that way. You know what I mean? He hadn't got anybody with him. Eddie Hearn, Joe Gallagher hadn't travelled with him. He sort of got left on his own. I felt a little bit sorry for him, to be honest with you. But he was embraced. You know, he wasn't treated badly, and he seems to be up for the fight. So, you know, let's get it on.
The information we got today, Steve, was that the fight is agreed in principle for Manchester in September. That was coming from kind of sources close to the Quigg camp. Mm-hmm. But you know, that's not confirmed, and I presume there's a lot of contract negotiations to be settled before that's really done. But apparently, you know, the idea is Manchester in September, because I was always under the impression that Quigg's injury would rule him out until September anyway. I could be wrong on that, but I remember at the time when he got the injury, it said something close to 6 months he would be out, and I was thinking, and then he's going to need a camp of at least probably 6 to 8 weeks. So that was kind of moving the fight back towards September. So it does seem logical that would be the date. I'm disappointed I didn't actually get to see the interview afterwards. Obviously we couldn't. They didn't do it on the loudspeaker within the stadium. So I didn't see what Scott Quigg says. I'm not sure if you've seen it yourself, but yeah, fair play to him for coming over. He was left on his own. There was nobody there, but he seemed to want to be there. It was good natured. He wants to fight. Carl wants to fight. So, and like they said, like Carl and Barry said afterwards, it does make sense. It's the logical fight for both fighters financially. So it has to be made, I think, and it's possible that Carl might have a filler fight in between, because between now and September, you know, he might want to have one more in between. But Quigg has said in the past that he would be happy to go straight into the Frampton fight. So, not sure how
I'd say if it is September, if anything, Quigg will have maybe a non-title fight or something like that. But I can't see Carl doing it. I don't know about yourself, Steve.
You would have thought that Quigg particularly would have had a tune-up fight, considering the hand injury and the amount of time he'd been out. But if he feels ready to go in, then fair play to him. For Frampton, I'm not really too sure that he would be looking for a fight in between, because, I mean, unless they pick someone out as a voluntary or something, and, you know, with all the risk that goes with that, I'd say he'd probably be more inclined to sit on the shelf and wait for the Quigg fight. But as you said, I mean, fair play for Scott, you know, for coming over. And how do you see the fight going, Jonny, if they do fight in Manchester? I mean, Quigg doesn't seem to be a particularly big ticket seller. I mean, what sort of numbers do you think they'd bring in? Obviously, Frampton would bring the Barmy Army over with him.
I know Carl said at the press conference it's time to have a weekend away, and there is that sort of feel. I remember we went over for the Clusky Can, and it adds a new party atmosphere. People aren't just drinking from that day; they're drinking from when they get on the boat or the planes. So
what's included, Jonny?
It's a big time. It's like it's a 3 days party session, and this time we're travelling, not worried about as much about losing or getting robbed, or, you know, we're going to travel, have a party before, and definitely I think a party after, and to bring that atmosphere over to a new, you still prefer it in Belfast, but I get the idea of that sort of weekend away feel, like going on tour, the Jackal Army on tour. I think it'd be you probably could even get more than 9,000 going over. You know, the chance for a weekend away, people jump on that.
Definitely so. What about you, Derek? If they did fight, how do you see the fight going? Do you see Carl knocking him out, as seems to be the consensus?
Yeah, like I'm more impressed with Carl now than I ever was. Like, as I said, I always knew he was a great fighter, and I always thought he was a level above the likes of Quigg. But now I even think he's quite possibly the best in the division. And I know that's a bold statement, because I'm a huge fan of Rigondeaux. But the more I watch Carl, I look and I think, with the power he has, if he catches Rigondeaux, could he knock him out? You know, and I think with Quigg is not on that level of Rigondeaux's and Frampton's, and I think Carl could potentially take Quigg out within 4 or 5 rounds, like he did with Avalos.
Mm-hmm. Well, lads, we're being joined now by Kenny Keith. Kenny, you're from the Boxing Rant, is that right? Do you want to introduce yourself? Tell us a bit about your podcast and stuff.
Absolutely. Thanks for inviting me on your Skype today.
No problem.
I'm the founder and editor of theboxingrant.com and the host of the Tale of the Tape Boxing podcast, which I co-host with good friend and fellow boxing degenerate Vince Cummings, and and then I also have a new show that I've launched recently called The Boxing Rant, where I deal with how professional prize fighting deals directly or indirectly in most cases with its most dedicated fans.
Excellent stuff. Well, we appreciate you coming on. I mean, you're a big Carl Frampton fan, Kenny. What do you think of his performance against Chris Avalos on the weekend?
Yeah, I've been watching Carl since his first fight with Kiko Martinez, and that's when I've became wise to him. And by first impression, the initial eye test, it became really clear to me that he possessed all the intangibles to be a great fighter. His ring IQ, his calm demeanor in the ring really serves him well. He's very calculated, and he's able to deploy those great skills and abilities that he has, whether it's his power punching or his accuracy or his defense. He's able to do that because of his intelligence in the ring. And I've always said on any platform when I'm talking about boxing, there's a certain type of fighter that we at the Boxing Rant are very attracted to as fans, and it's the likes of the Carl Framptons and the Gennady Golovkins and the Carl Froches and the Sergey Kovalevs, the guys that put it on the line, that get in the ring and really don't mess around.
Mm-hmm. Well, Kenny, feel free to stick around. I'm going to throw something out here for all you guys, actually, and give me your opinions on what you think about this. After the fight on Saturday night, Carl's promoter, manager, Barry McGuigan, said that he felt Carl was the number one super bantamweight or 122-pound fighter in the world. That sentiment was also echoed in today's Belfast Telegraph. Now, personally speaking, as big a fan as I am of Carl, obviously following from early on in his career, like you guys have as well, I feel that Guillermo Rigondeaux is the number one fighter at super bantamweight, and I have three quick reasons to put this forward. Number one, Carl hasn't beaten Rigondeaux. Rigondeaux, when he beat Donaire and unified the titles, was the consensus number one in the division. Carl hasn't beaten him, so he hasn't leapfrogged him in that position. Secondly, Rigondeaux hasn't lost to anybody else, so you can't make the argument that the number one's lost and then you can make an argument for somebody else based upon what they've done to overtake him. And number three, Rigondeaux has made it clear that he wants the fight. He wants to settle this kind of score with Frampton, the IBF champion, but Cyclone aren't choosing to go that route, rightly or wrongly. We know the reasons. Rigondeaux isn't TV friendly, doesn't sell tickets, he's got a negative style, etc. So for whatever reason, they don't seem to want the fight, whereas Hyde and Rigondeaux are actively pursuing the fight. So on those three things, I don't think you can supersede Rigondeaux as the number one. Johnny, does that sound like a reasonable case?
Yeah, but when Barry says that, I don't think he's talking about sort of rankings and where people stand and who has what title. I think if you were to put, with no titles and nobody had any accolades, if you were to put a video of Rigondeaux in front of Barry and a video of Carl, he'd say, well, that guy is better. I think that's where he's coming from, if that makes sense. He's not like, he's saying he sees more talent in Carl than he does in Rigondeaux at the minute, and he thinks Carl has the beating of Rigondeaux. But there's a valid argument, they won't fight him yet, but they put forward financials. I don't think you can turn down a Scott Quigg fight just for the money, and it's kind of a handy defence. Maybe that's a bit of an exaggeration, and you get massive money, raise your profile further. I'd still think Rigondeaux would revert the type. I think people are looking too much into him being dropped in the last fight, because I think he sat in the pocket there deliberately to try and look a little bit more entertaining. But when it's a big fight and when he's not bored and he's focused, I think we'll see a better Rigondeaux. We'll see him back to when he fought Donaire. But I think if Carl hits him, he stays hit. So I think it's more of a 50-50 fight than it was previously, and one I'd love to see now.
What do you think about this then, Derek? I said to Gary Hyde last night that I felt the Scott Quigg fight against Frampton would sort of settle their score there, sort of, the fight's been brewing between them two, and then the winner could fight Rigondeaux at the end of the year. Now, Gary wasn't interested in this. As Rigondeaux's manager, he said he wasn't interested in that situation because he has no concerns with what Quigg and Frampton are doing, which is fair enough. But I felt that the fight between Frampton and the winner of Frampton and Quigg would be more likely to happen against Rigondeaux at the end of the year if they've sort of bumped each other off before then. I mean, what do you think about that?
I think for Carl and for Quigg, it makes financial sense to have that fight next. And at the end of the day, I always say boxing is a business. And if they're going to get a mega payday for a massive fight, wherever it is, at the end of next summer, whether it's September in Manchester, like we heard today, or whatever that is, it makes financial sense for him to do that. The winner of that fight, I know a few weeks back, Carl had said his dream 2005 was, after Avalos, was Quigg, possibly Santa Cruz or Rigondeaux. It makes sense to fight Rigondeaux at the end of the year. As I was just saying before Kenny come on, I'm a huge Rigondeaux fan, and I would have thought it was a very dangerous fight for Carl to take. Whereas now, after I've seen how comprehensively he dismantled Avalos, I would be more confident of Carl being able to put Rigondeaux away if he can catch him, and that's what I think that fight would come down to, is if Carl can lay hands on Rigondeaux, if Rigondeaux reverts back to type and dances around and wins rounds by just racking up the points like an old amateur style, which at times can be beautiful to watch. Rigondeaux could potentially beat Carl, but if Carl can land, you would have to think that Carl could potentially do damage to Rigondeaux.
Mm-hmm. Well, lads, we've got a bit of a role reversal here. My old friend Andy Paterson's jumped on the call. He's the host at the Boxing Asylum podcast, so he's usually asking me the questions. But Andy,
we'd have a night off, mate, for a change.
Thanks very much for coming on, man. We were just talking there, obviously, about Frampton and potential next fights, and I was saying that Barry obviously said at the weekend that he felt Frampton was the number one super bantamweight in the world, and that sentiment was echoed by the Belfast Telegraph in today's newspaper.
Did you write that?
No, I didn't write it. Where do you stand on this? You're gonna make a case for Frampton being the number one, aren't you? That's what you're gonna tell me.
No, mate. To be honest, everybody knows that Rigondeaux is the number one fighter on 122. I've no problem about Frampton being ranked number 2, number 3. I did the rankings on the Boxing Asylum page recently, and they actually had Frampton ranked number 2. But some of the guys, especially the Americans anyway, want to actually have Frampton ranked number 3 and Leo Santa Cruz, considering his previous fights anyway, they want to have him ranked number 2.
Kenny, was that you who was ranking Santa Cruz number 2?
Oh, absolutely not. I think Santa Cruz is a borderline. He's teetering on falling out of the top 4. He's been so padded and protected over here. I don't know if it's the fragile nature of his personality. I don't know if they're worried about how he'll react when he's put to the fire, because he doesn't have that. He doesn't have that edge that when the shit hits the fan. They're not sure how he's going to react. I mean, he's been fighting his sparring partners, so if that tells you anything, I mean, it's very easy for somebody that's protected by Al Haymon to be able to sit back and every time he beats another sparring partner to throw Frampton or Rigo or Quigg's name out there, because he knows that Al Haymon's going to protect him. I mean, a perfect example of this was when, as soon as Rigo said, "Give me Santa Cruz," this was before the comments he made to the Belfast newspaper and about how he wanted Frampton and that Frampton was the only one that mattered. Oscar De La Hoya actively opened negotiations, and then, sure enough, as soon as Al Haymon catches word, he activates the buyout clause in his contract. So if I'm putting my rankings together for this division, I have no problem with Rigo remaining at number 1. Everybody's opinion on that is perfectly valid. And you know, when you boil it down to brass tacks, you have to honor that. But as far as I will pose the argument that I believe Frampton will beat Rigo. Do I feel that he deserves to be number 1 right now? No, absolutely not.
Steve, fair to say, I mean, I would echo some of the sentiments. I don't think Frampton would beat Rigo right now. I think you'd probably give him the best fight out of anyone at 122 pounds. I've also said that Frampton would school Santa Cruz. I've been quite vocal on that in the past as well. I think he would just work the angles beautifully. He would just actually take him apart, I think. We saw how pedestrian that Avalos was on Saturday. I think Santa Cruz is exactly the same fighter, comes forward in straight lines, and I think Frampton would actually just pick him apart easily. Regards to Rigondeaux, some people will maybe make arguments about Rigo, you know, he's not fighting the best fighters, but that's not his fault. It's like Golovkin. You know, none of the best fighters at 160 want to fight him because they know what's going to happen, you know. So Rigo, I feel very sorry for. We spoke to Gary Hyde last night as well. He must be tearing his hair out, actually, if he's got any left, trying to get Rigo a big fight. if he can't get him a big fight, he's telling us last night that Barry was actually blanking him in the corridor after the fight on Saturday, and that's after being on ITV telling 1.9 million people that they want to fight Rigo next. He's the number one fighter in the world. Well, you got to go and prove you're number one fighter in the world. Fight Rigondeaux. That is the only fight there.
Jump in there, Jonny. What were you going to say?
Gary has loads of hair left.
At the moment,
must be going grey then.
you can't turn down the Quigg fight. Like, it's, as I said it before, it's massive money and a handy enough defence, in my opinion. So and then go after Rigo, and if you lose, then say, well, we struggled at the weight, so go up a weight, possibly. Or as he said, Santa Cruz isn't going to fight him. Rigondeaux, you'd have to do in probably Belfast as well, because it's not, and they're looking to go to England too. So I think they want to go to England, beat Quigg in England, and then I think they're going to go after Rigondeaux. And I think by that stage, I think people talking, as I said already, people talking about Rigondeaux being dropped. I think he's just being a bit brave or trying to be a bit more entertaining. I think when he fights Carl, you'll see the Rigondeaux that fought in there, and it'd be a tough fight. But as was just said, I think Carl gives him the toughest fight to date, and possibly could win him, because if he hits him, he's going to stay here.
Well, a quick consensus of opinion then. Jonny, first of all with you. Derek was saying that it looks like the Scott Quigg Frampton fight is going to maybe take place in Manchester in September. We're just hearing rumours of that at the moment.
He heard that from a good source today, but it could be sort of leaked to put a bit of pressure on Carl, or to say, oh, things are going well, etc., etc. But we have from a good source, it's September in Manchester.
Who wins and how then, Jonny?
With Quigg?
Yeah.
If Frampton once he stops him in 4 or 5, but I think maybe a bit later he might take his time and milk the moment. I just don't think Quigg is on his level. He's not the same fighter whatsoever.
Derek, what about you?
Yeah, in my book, Quigg's not a world champion. I'm not a fan of interim or regular or paper or whatever type of champion you call him. He's not on the same level as Carl, and I think Carl could take him out. Probably within 4 or 5. I think Avalos is probably a better fighter than Quigg even. Like so, I think Quigg could be badly exposed in that fight, without a doubt.
Mm-hmm. I think it would be a good fight between Quigg and Avalos. Actually, Kenny, what do you think about Quigg against Frampton? How would you see that one going?
I'd see it pretty much the same way. I think the big question mark in that fight would probably be Quigg's chin. I mean, we haven't seen him tested at the elite level yet, as far as the Carl Frampton's concerned. Will he be able to get inside on Frampton? One of the things that interests me about this fight is Frampton always seems to be the smaller guy with the shorter reach, but for some strange reason, he's always able to get inside the other person's reach and establish his own range inside of the other person's range. So those are some curious things for me, is how they'll be able to gauge distance between one another. And I think Quigg's chin, if it holds out and it is the championship chin that he speaks so highly of himself, then I'm going to have to say Frampton by unanimous decision.
I think Frampton will knock Quigg out in about 6 rounds, and I get your point there about Frampton's judgment of range and judgment of distance. I thought he did that perfectly against Avalos on Saturday night. And Quigg's WBA title, it's spurious to say the least, and he got it on the draw after being sort of handed it before the fight, and it's hardly been a murderer's row of challengers as well. How would you see it going if he got it on with Frampton?
Yeah, well, he got that belt by FedEx, doesn't he? Well, most of his opponents have been bantamweights drawn up. Stephen Jamoy, he was a bantamweight brought in at late notice. Steve, I think you know where I sit with this when I've said it before. I think Frampton absolutely executes Scott Quigg, and Scott Quigg's a really nice guy. I spoke to Carol before. He's on a different level, amateur-wise as well. He had a great amateur experience. Scott Quigg never had an amateur career, I don't think. You're going on about, for instance, that the way that he's got the shorter reach. Frampton's timing is impeccable. That's how he was able to land against Avalos with a superior reach here on Saturday night. I have no doubts about it. Scott Quigg, I've seen him get dropped off a jab from Jamie Arthur. He's got a good left hook to the body, but if he can't take Frampton out, he's shown he can take a punch against Martinez. Got clipped a few times against Avalos, but he said that he didn't think the guy had the punches about him. So, in all honesty, I've got to say, mate, I'd be surprised if it went past 6 rounds. I really think Frampton's got the power to knock him out. I've seen Frampton in the gym before, hitting a 100-kilo bag, making it dance like Patrick Swayze did. You know, seriously, mate, the guy's power is legit. Trust me. I think Frampton within 6 rounds.
And I think the thing is, Steve, that it's going to be sold as a 50-50 fight, and the layman will see it as a 50-50 fight. So Frampton's going to look even more explosive when he takes him out too.
Definitely, he definitely is. Andy, what about the TV situation? The Sky ITV have thrown their hat into the ring. Sky, of course, we're hearing pay-per-view. Is it pay-per-view worthy on its own? Could they try and sell that through?
Of course they could, mate. You know what Sky likes, like with that hype machine with Tony Bellew and Nathan Cleverly. They could sell sand to the Arabs. Come on, mate. We know about Sky. You know, I'd love to see it on ITV, but I was kind of disappointed when I heard about the viewing figures earlier today. I think it only peaked at 1.9 million. But
really?
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing. I was expecting slightly more than that actually.
Yeah.
I was slightly
I think you
disappointed with those numbers.
add 500,000. That was ITV, and then if you put UTV, then you're adding 500,000. So 2.4 million.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, I would definitely think it would. If Hearn gets real, you know, I think Barry said it on Saturday night as well. Is if people just get real about the financial side of things. If Quigg accepts, he's maybe not, you know, the draw, so to speak. You know, Frampton is the big money, so the big ticket seller, I think, especially in Ireland. If the fight's in Manchester or whatever, I mean, you're going to get that. The Irish are going to travel over for that. I would come down from Scotland to watch that fight, definitely, as well. So if it's going to happen in Manchester, fine, good and well. But I think Quigg needs to accept maybe a 60-40 split. Eddie Hearn needs to get real. It's not a 50-50 fight. And anyone knows who's watched these two growing up over the last 4 or 5 years knows Frampton's going to light him up.
Fair enough, Andy. The view from across the pond, Kenny, what's the TV situation over there? I mean, could you see Frampton, you know, getting onto a Showtime, or could they be interested? I know that the likes of Santa Cruz and Oscar De La Hoya have made positive noises in the past. Obviously, Santa Cruz isn't with De La Hoya anymore, but I mean, there's no chance of them getting the fight now with the Al Haymon situation. But I mean, could you see Frampton, you know, being a draw over there? He's talked about wanting to go over and fight in New York and Las Vegas. I mean, the American fight fans would warm to him, wouldn't they?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, I was saying on my show yesterday, you know, I saw Andy Lee fight at Madison Square Garden in the undercard of Cotto Martinez, and you know, there was a loyal following in a big arena for a fight that was a lead-in fight, and I believe with the exciting level, my co-host thinks that Frampton has the long-term potential with the right matchmaking and scheduling that he could have a fraction of a Pacquiao effect, and because of his exciting style, and also he would be more relative to a majority of fight fans anyways, because of the the common lineage between the United Kingdom and the United States. So yeah, I mean, as far as the TV's concerned, I'm going to tell you right now, this is the biggest cluster that has ever existed as far as getting fights from the UK in the United States. We're literally bootlegging internet feeds to watch this happening. I got my living room set up with 2 computers and a Google Chromecast, watching like 64-bit. It's just ridiculous. And so I got the Fury fight on one computer, I got the Frampton fight on another computer, and the fight gets picked up by a Wealth of Entertainment, which is in like 5 households in Alabama somewhere. And, I mean, if they could get ESPN to pick it up, and I know I'd like to hear your all's take on this, the Eddie Hearn factor, because I know that Hearn has had dialogue and extensive meetings with Al Haymon and has talked about how he would like to do business, bring Matchroom over to the United States. How much Eddie Hearn's role could play in bringing a fight like Frampton Quigg to mainstream network television in the United States?
Eddie Hearn, Derek, is definitely trying to get involved on the Frampton train, isn't he? Again, he's had him already. He knows what a big draw he is. I've been a bit cynical in the past, saying that Eddie signing up Scott Quigg was, just a ploy for all roads lead to Frampton. Of course, Eddie got involved with Avalos as well on some kind of managerial basis before the fight. Eddie would love to get that fight on Sky, wouldn't he?
Yeah, like I think without doubt, what Eddie is looking for with the Quigg and Frampton fight, when it happens, he wants it on Sky. He wants it as a pay-per-view fight. I'm not sure how that relates to TV in America, whether one of the American networks picks up on Sky's coverage. I'm not sure what way that works, but yeah, you can be guaranteed if that would be.
Oh,
You lost Derek.
I think we're losing you a bit there, Derek. Jonny, actually, let me ask you something here, because at the press conference on Saturday night, they were talking about maybe going down south, to the Republic, sort of your neck of the woods. I mean, I don't think that is going to happen. I think they maybe should have gone a little bit earlier down there. Do you think it could happen?
No, it doesn't look like it. Like Sky weren't ever too keen to come over here anyway. So, and I don't know, maybe with UTV Ireland there's a possibility if they've sort of camera facilities and that down here, but no, I don't see that happening. In terms of Frampton on America, I'd love to see the Irish fight fans relate to America and even let the Americans see how we do it, a bit of Sweet Caroline, pump up the crowd. and then we do a ring walk proper, we don't talk through them, we quiet it down, and the ring walk's part of it. Like, I don't know why they never do that in American fights. You can't
Drives
go wrong.
me crazy.
Yeah, like we do it right, and you think they'd see that and be able to implement that. I remember when I was over for Macklin Martinez, I was looking forward to the ring walk all day, and it was basically nothing. That was just walking in with backdrop music. And with that too, I think Eddie Hearns needs to start dropping all this modern music. Who the F is Alice? Sweet Caroline. There's nothing better. It gets us all in the mood.
I think Eddie's catering to the darts fans, isn't he?
Yeah, possibly.
Mr. Casual.
Mr. Casual, exactly. Well, we had Michael Buffer over on Saturday night doing the main event, and we found out, Jonny, that Jerry Callan's not a fan of Michael Buffer, apparently. He says he prefers Jimmy Lennon Jr. I mean, I don't know what you think about that, Kenny. I'm not the biggest fan of Michael Buffer myself. I think they could have saved his fee and spent it on the undercard. I mean, are you a Buffer fan?
I don't know, man. He's kind of a novelty. You know what I mean? It's like the guy's 70 years old now. He's been doing this since I was a kid, and probably well before that. And I do like fight fans. Here we go. I like the Jimmy Lennon and yeah. So But hey, real quick to backtrack for a second. I do know that Frotch Groves 2 did about 800,000 views on HBO. So in my opinion, I think that fight had huge hype behind it because of the backstory, because of just how batshit crazy George Groves is in general. I think with the right promotion over here, I think Quigg Frampton picked up by HBO on a Saturday afternoon here on the East Coast, and the States could do pretty well.
Kenny, is there any other Irish fighters that are sort of perking up your attention at the moment? I know that Jason Quigley's over, signed with Golden Boy at the moment. John Joe Nevin was over for a while. Is there anybody else you're sort of taking a look at? You know what?
I am really, really interested in Quigley. I'm going to have my eye on him for sure. But I'll tell you what, there's a lack in the United States of fighters that just sort of put their entire career and everything they've built up to on the line like Andy Lee has. I know he's not the most skilled fighter on the planet, but there's something that I admire about that guy. He went from his career. I was at that fight against Jackson. He was getting whitewashed. He was backed against the ropes, closed his eyes, and his entire career changed. In that one punch, he went from his career being over here, at least in the United States, to 2 knockouts later. He's a candidate for Fighter of the Year. You know what I mean? So to me, I'm a huge fan of Andy Lee. I hate this fight against Peter Quillen. I don't know what planet Peter Quillen lives on. The fact that Lee takes this fight makes me a little skeptical about what's going on behind the scenes. I mean, it's great exposure for Andy Lee, but this Quillen fight is a horrible matchup for him.
Andy, while we've got you on as well, I mean, what better segue to get into Lee and Quillen? I mean, Quillen's already given up the belt, hasn't he? He's coming back again. Andy Lee's obviously got the big punch. I mean, do you think Lee has got a chance of knocking Quillen out? How do you see that one going?
Well, it seems to he's proven over the last couple of fights. I forgot, was it Kenny's name was? He just spoke there. He mentioned
Kenny,
against John Jackson. He was getting whitewashed. I felt pretty much the same in the Korobov fight, and he just seemed to turn it around with the right hook. It's obviously good to know he's got that equaliser in his back pocket, because I think he might need it against Quillen. Now, Quillen's got sneaky power himself, but he can be outboxed, and if Lee can just find his foothold in that fight, he's maybe got a chance. But at the end of the day, as well, it's all about the money for Andy Lee now. To be honest, I think anyway. I mean, he's 32 now. He's getting $1 million. From what I'm hearing, he's $1 million for this fight. That's life-changing money. So hopefully he does well. And to be honest, I really do hope that Andy Lee turns the business, because, as I call him, fake chocolate. He's just business all the way. How you dump a career high payday of $1.7 million to fight an easier fight than Matt Korobov, and then turn around, vacate the belt. I mean, I don't know who's advised him. Al Heyman's advised him. I think that's stupid. He could have took that fight, a lot easier fight for Peter Quillen to fight Matt Korobov. But I really think Andy Lee has got his work cut out for him. If he can get a foothold in that fight, box him, and then just try and land that right hook, he's got a great chance, I think. But I think Quillen will take it on points.
Mm-hmm. Well, Jonny, we obviously would have liked to see Andy Lee fighting in Dublin. There was talk of him fighting Patrick Nielsen at a time, and the Billy Joe Saunders fight is on the radar as well. But I mean, you can't really blame Andy for going over and taking the big money, can you, to make himself financially secure?
No, I wouldn't turn down $1 million to fight Quillen at the minute myself. But I think if you would have, as I probably said on this show before, previously when Andy and Matthew were about looking for world title fights, we all would have picked Quillen as the champion that was the most beatable and the one you wanted. And I think Frank Warren is obsessed with a Lee and Saunders fight, and I think he would have out the mandatory unless someone told him something where he can say, they're getting a few quid, but to make them believe there's something down there that Lee can win it. So I don't think it's as tough a fight as people make out. And as Lee said, Quillen has never fought someone with his stature or his punching power or the same size as him. He generally goes in against people that are smaller than him. So I think Lee can give him trouble, and I think it's a closer fight than people are making out too.
I think so. Derek, what about yourself, just to close it off? Andy Lee against Peter Quillen. It's obviously catching up on us pretty soon now. It's not far away. It's a huge opportunity for Lee, and if he was to beat the likes of Peter Quillen, then, I mean, who could know where he goes next? The Golovkin fight could even come back on the radar for him.
Yeah, I think I've said it before, Steve. I think it's a dangerous fight for Lee to take, insofar as if he had the Nielsen defence, which would have been potentially a handy one before the Billy Joe kind of summer extravaganza, he would have made probably a similar amount of money. I don't know if you could sell a big stadium fight, you're going to make millions off that, but he's going to took the harder one against Quillen, the harder option, I think. If he beats Quillen, it's possible he beats him if he lands, but if he doesn't land, that's the thing I keep on saying about Andy Lee. As much as I'm a big fan, he hasn't been spectacular in any of his last probably 4 or 5 fights, but he's kind of landed a knockout punch somewhere in there. So, you have to rely on him actually landing that punch. And if he doesn't, does he beat Quillen? I don't know. It's a dangerous one for him to take, but potentially, of course, he could knock out Quillen and go on and get another mega fight with Billy Joe Saunders. And then I think he would be crazy. Like anybody would be crazy to go on and fight Golovkin. But I think he said in the past that he would want that fight, but I think he would be crazy to take it.
I think he'd take it. I wouldn't fancy fighting Golovkin myself. If Andy Lee was to fight Golovkin, Andy, do you think that he could put a stop to the freight train, or is he just going to go under the wheels like everybody else?
How does he do it, mate? I like Andy. I've spoken to him before. I really don't know how he's going to stop that freight train. I mean, Golovkin's just great at everything he does, especially on the attack. He's probably open on the defence, mind you. Again, it says if we've seen Golovkin eat up Curtis Stevens' best money punch, which is a left hook, and if he can eat up his money punch, surely he can eat up Andy Lee's. To be honest, mate, I can't see Andy being competitive with Golovkin in any sort of way, unfortunately.
It'd be a really tough one. I'd love to see.
It would actually be worse than the Chavez fight.
Yeah, exactly, because Golovkin brings that strength, that brute power, and he's obviously got rid of Macklin, got rid of Rubio. He's sort of dusted up, Kenny, the lesser level of opposition. I mean, I'm sure you're as impressed with Golovkin as we are, and you saw that fight in Monte Carlo the other week against Martin Murray. Martin Murray's no fool either. Obviously got a draw in Germany with Sturm. Arguably, some people thought he beat Sergio Martinez in Argentina. He was a credible opponent. He was big guy on the night. But, I mean, all he could do was just hang in there, show his balls, show his toughness. You just can't... How do you stop Golovkin? He's got everything.
With a 20 gauge shotgun.
I don't even think that'd stop him.
Yeah, maybe a double barrel 12 gauge. You know what? Honestly, I think the only way you stop Golovkin is with Sergey Kovalev. Honestly, who are you going to put in the ring against this guy that's within weight, anywhere from 154 to to light heavyweight? And like Julio Cesar Chavez may take him the distance, but the guy was a human punching bag against Sergio Martinez. He didn't throw more than 100 punches. We'll see what this new Chavez looks like against Fonfara, a tough-chinned fighter, as we saw in his bout with Adonis Stevenson. But as far as Golovkin's concerned, Andy Lee, Peter Quillen, Miguel Cotto, Canelo Alvarez, it doesn't matter. At this point, it really, really does not matter. The only guys that give him a good fight right now, 3 guys to me, okay? Mm-hmm. And I know that there's a lot of debate about this. There's 3 guys, though. There's Andre Ward, Carl Froch, and Sergey Kovalev. And for different reasons. Kovalev's got the total package very similar to Golovkin. Froch, because he's got the steely reserve and the granite chin, and he can punch too. And then, of course, Andre Ward, because some consider him as slick as snot, So,
do you see any of them, Andy, giving Golovkin trouble?
Sorry, mate, I'm actually having a wee bit. I don't know if you know, but I'm having a wee bit of problems today. Actually, with Lou DeBella. Sorry, what was the context of that question? Sorry,
we were just saying about who we thought could beat Golovkin. Kenny was putting forward the case for, I think, was it Andre Ward, Carl Froch, and who was the other one? Kovalev, was it, Kenny?
And Kovalev.
And Kovalev. Who do you see halting Golovkin?
Definitely no one at middleweight. Definitely that. No. Even gone down at 154, I don't think he would make that weight. In all honesty, 168 is where it's going to happen. Andre Ward, I think, would beat him. He's just great at nullifying everything about an offensive fighter. Froch, I think that is a sick fight. That is one sick fight. Actually, that's just a shootout. It's the strongest and the biggest heart is going to prevail in that fight. I think that's probably a 50-50 fight. I'd maybe even side with Golovkin slightly, because I think maybe Froch's, I wouldn't say his dedication to sports maybe waning, but I think he's maybe got one eye in retirement, and once you're one eye in retirement, you're very close to just slipping over the edge. Kovalev, that fight's never going to happen, in all honesty. I don't see Kovalev making 168, and Golovkin's certainly not going to go up to light heavyweight. So yeah, if anyone out of that list, it's going to be Andre Ward, definitely.
Johnny, would you say Andre Ward or any of the others off the list, or are you going to maybe throw in a different name for us?
Like Andy, I would love to see Froch and Golovkin. I think Golovkin wins that, and I think the only man is Andre Ward. I don't see anyone else causing him trouble. He's just a beast, and he has a bit of everything about him. And definitely at 160, he just looks untouchable.
And what about you, Derek, just to finish off?
Yeah, I think nobody in the middleweight division, I don't think. I think potentially if you were going up to super, I think he beats Froch. I think Andre Ward would be probably the best fight you would see between him and so. I think Kovalev, was it Andy who said, you're not going to see them at the same weight. So, although I did hear a rumor before that he dropped Kovalev in a spar, but I don't know how true that is.
Not true, mate. That's not true. That's definitely not true. I think that's Sanchez blowing smoke up his arse, I think. Definitely not true.
I thought that was urban legend, all right, but I thought I'd put it out there. But yeah, I think Andre Ward is the only fight that's kind of potentially a 50-50. Well, I suppose you could argue that with Froch as well, but I think he beats Froch. So yeah, I think in order for Golovkin to start getting mega fights and fights that are 50-50, because as I said, I think he just cleans out the middleweight division. I think he has to move up in weight. There was talk of him going down in weight, but I think that's just, that would be punishment for light middleweights. I think you would have to, you couldn't see anybody at that weight beating him.
Mm-hmm.
Can I add one more thing about Andre Ward?
Of course, Kenny, yep.
Andre Ward has become so unbelievably irrelevant. He had trouble towards the end, before he went on this self-righteous hiatus and frivolous lawsuits, where he had trouble selling out his hometown, small arenas. It is sort of the Rigondeaux effect, where people don't like his style because it's jab hug, jab headbutt hug. The Bernard, the Bernard Hopkins, Vladimir Klitschko style. But you know what? His fan base is completely diminished. The only reason that he mentions Golovkin's name is because Golovkin is irrelevant. If you remember, for Froch Groves 2, the comments that Ward made about that fight, it's just another domestic fight. That fight's horrible, blah, blah, blah. And every comment that he made, you could finish the sentence by saying, but it's because I'm not involved. You know what I mean? So it's difficult to make a fight with Ward because, one, it's going to be another year and a half until he takes a real fight because he needs 2 or 3 tune-up fights after his 2-year vacation. So, as far as Andre Ward's concerned, I'm glad the ring stripped him. I'm glad the WBA mandated that they negotiate with Froch because that's their polite way of saying, this is our way of stripping you because we know you're not going to fight him right now, so you're going to have to vacate the belt. As far as I'm concerned, Andre Ward is a dead man walking over here.
Froch won't fight him either, though. Let's be real about it. I think the way he's sounding, Froch is going to dump the belt. He's going to dump the belt, and he said he'd fight anyone, but at the same time he says that a rematch doesn't sell. Well, okay, no worries. I think if he doesn't get the Chavez fight, it's retirement pipe and slippers time for Mr. Froch, I think.
It's a shame to see Andre Ward become so irrelevant with all the talent, the Olympic gold medal, and he just seems to be happy to have slotted into the sort of HBO commentating, analysing role. He seems to have all the time in the world, and he's going to need tune-ups, like Kenny said. He is irrelevant.
Kenny is right. He has got this sense of self-worth and importance about him. I really don't mean he's got all the talent in the world, but he isn't pleasing on the eye for some people. But I think at the same time as well, I think HBO need to get a grip here. If HBO wanted to have Ward against Golovkin fight, they demand it. If not, then okay, Ward doesn't get the fight. He doesn't get paid by his paymasters. Just sit them down and say, listen, you two are the 2 best fighters you've got on the network. We want you to fight. Get a deal. As simple as that.
Fair enough. Lads, if everyone's happy sticking around, I was just going to actually briefly touch up on another fight that happened at the weekend there. I only saw highlights of it myself now, but Jonny, the former Irish heavyweight champion Tyson Fury, was in action, and I know you're a big fan of his singing, and he grabbed hold of the mic at the end there and gave us, I think,
a few songs, isn't it?
Walking in Memphis. It's been a while since we've heard him serenading us, hasn't it?
There's a song about him driving his granddad's car or something, is it not?
I have no idea.
I haven't. We've been that flat out with the Frampton stuff, Dave. I actually haven't had time to catch that fight. I haven't seen it, but I'm happy he won. As I say, former Irish champion, so we have to claim him as Irish and support him.
Well, to be honest, I mean, I've only seen highlights myself, and I wasn't really going to touch on that particular fight in general, but just the fact that Tyson's back active again, he's calling out Klitschko. I mean, where does he stand with his career at the moment? Is he going to finally get this big fight, Jonny? I mean, where do you see him going now?
Well, I think for Tyson, the difference in Tyson over the last number of years since he's had Peter in his corner is the way he fights, his body shape, his sort of mental attitude all seems different. I think Peter is the key. I think if you see when he fought Cunningham and Peter wasn't in the corner, he reverted the type, messing about and got dropped. And I hope he does get a big fight. You never know with Klitschko. I don't know if Klitschko's going to fight him or not, but he'll eventually get the world a fight one day. And if not this year, next year he's going to get a world title fight.
Mm-hmm. I remember, Derek, before the Kevin Johnson fight over here at one of the press conferences, Mick Hennessy was sort of canvassing opinion amongst the journalists to see if a Vladimir Klitschko-Tyson Fury fight were to happen, would they be able to sell it out in the Aviva and all these type of things? We weren't sure how many tickets it would sell, and it seemed like it was going to be on the horizon for Tyson then. I mean, his career's obviously stalled badly since then, and last time we were talking, it looked as if he was going to fight Deontay Wilder. They had a bit of Twitter beef between themselves. I mean, that would have been a good one, wouldn't it?
Yeah, for me, the Wilder fight is the one that sells over here and across the water, just because... I'm not a fan of Klitschko, but to me, a Wilder and Tyson Fury fight would be massive. It's the two of them are good talkers. The two of them can trash talk well as well, and I think you could hype that fight into into a really mega super fight, and it's I would rather see that than Klitschko. Although the word out there today, I think I've seen it somewhere today, that they're potentially talking about a September fight between Fury and Klitschko. As I said, Klitschko doesn't excite me. Wilder does, and that's the fight I'd love to see.
Can Wilder sing?
Sorry?
Can Wilder sing?
Probably not as good as Tyson, but I'm sure Kenny might be able to tell us that. I'm not too sure.
Can he sing, Wilder? Kenny, have you heard him rapping or anything? No.
Yeah. They did a lead in to the Berman Stavern fight, and he was in his gym singing some deep South soul gospel music. It was pretty funny.
Well, can he fight better than he can sing? I mean, I'm sure you saw the Bermain-Stavern fight. I got that one badly wrong. I thought Stavern was going to beat Wilder. Didn't see it go in the distance. Thought that he was going to get knocked out. He showed a new dimension to his game that night.
Yeah, absolutely. Chisora was horribly prepared. I mean, he was spotted numerous times in the lead up to the fight with Mayweather in the strip clubs, and he didn't train. Come on, honestly. The guy was a walking punching bag, and who holds a post-fight press conference in the hospital to announce that he was dehydrated for the fight? I mean, come on. So yeah, I mean, as far as Wilder is concerned, though, that Fury fight, I'm telling you right now, their banter back and forth, because it's good spirited, it's not ugly. You know what I mean? Is some of the best entertainment. I think I have to completely agree. A Fury Wilder fight, that promotion would be an absolute blast.
Andy, would you like that one? I mean, the new incarnation of Tyson Fury, out of the ring is still as outrageous as ever, but inside the ring, it's not the Fury that we saw against Further or Pajkic or any of those guys. He doesn't get hurt these days. He boxes behind his jab. It's a duller Fury, isn't it?
Yep.
In the ring.
We did discuss it last night, Steve, didn't we? He has his last few performances have sort of impressed me. What I mean by sort of is it's also kind of boring to watch. In the past he's been dropped by Pajkic and Further and stuff, but it's been exciting to watch in those fights. But as someone said there, with Peter in his corner, he's far more measured, far more controlled. I mean, we saw what happened to him when he fought Steve Cunningham when Peter wasn't in his corner in New York. Cunningham's not a big heavyweight, but he dropped Fury pretty heavily in that second round, and he hurt him again in the fourth with another straight right hand. I don't know if he can beat Klitschko. The Wilder fight would be exciting. Simple fact is you've got a lot of smack talk going up into the fight. I'd be still say that's a 50-50 fight because I'm still not sold on Wilder, but his punching power is pure. If he lands, you're going to go. And we've seen Fury get knocked down by lesser opponents, but at the same time, if Fury can actually box to a plan, just get that jab going a wee bit more, effective. I think he flicks it out sometimes as well. I think I saw it again there on Saturday night. But maybe he's fighting down to the level of his opposition. I don't know. He's certainly more measured, but I just think as well as he's got to be more tighter in his defence. Needs to learn to kind of hold, especially against the bigger guys, because you can just see Wilder stepping in with these big, massive windmill shots that he throws. Fury's got to keep himself very tight defensively to make sure he doesn't ship any of those right hands, and just basically box all night long. And if he can do that, I can see him maybe sneaking a decision.
What about the influence of his father, Andy? He's out of prison now. Obviously, Peter and Tyson have got a good thing going on. Do you think it'd be a hindrance or a help, or it won't affect things?
I really don't know. I mean, obviously, I'm not really clued up as much as you guys probably are. I mean, I don't know what kind of relationship he's got with his father. I mean, I know he's been to see him in jail a couple of times, etc. So, obviously, I'm coming out of prison and stuff. It would be great for the entire family, actually. Just as long as he's not really getting too much involved in camp, I think. To be honest, I think Peter's been the one. I remember speaking to Peter maybe about a year ago. He was saying that for the first 11 fights of Tyson's career, he practically trained himself. He got that far in 11 pro fights by himself, which speaks volumes for his natural ability. But Peter's been the guy that's moulded him and got him this far now. I mean, he's on the cusp of a world title shot. I think Peter's got to be the one that's got to have the final say in his camps. As long as Tyson doesn't end up saying, I want to change things up a little bit, I think Peter's got to be the man. He's got to be the chief second from here on in.
Mm-hmm. Before we move on, Jonny, just brief final word. I mean, Peter is a really calming influence on Tyson, isn't he? Like Derek said, whenever he wasn't in the corner for the Cunningham fight, that was when, sort of Tyson faltered a little bit. I mean, do you think the dad will be an influence, or will it not matter?
I seen an interview with the father where he was saying that Tyson fought on Channel 5 just so that his dad could watch him box, and they seemed fairly close. But in the same interview, his dad was saying Peter was the main man and the best coach in the world and so forth. So I know his dad's around the gym all day, every day, but I think he just wants to be around. I don't think he's going to have a negative influence in terms of or try and take over what Peter's doing. I think anyone can see from a mile out the difference in him when Peter's around. So if you're McKenna, you're saying to Tyson, make sure you have Peter, and you're putting that pressure on to keep Peter there, because just body shape is the difference in how he fights. He's not wild in the ring. I know a few people that have been in the gym. I think Ricardo, that takes a couple of snaps for us, was over there recently. He was saying Peter has even the training down to regiment. He might as well be an army camp. And Big Sexy's been over there, has been and has been very impressed.
I love that name.
Although he hasn't dropped any weight when he was over there, but he was very impressed with how the camp is run. And he was saying, like, from sparring Tyson, that he thinks Tyson can go, to world title level, that he's probably one of the best he's been in with. Now he hasn't been anyone as a pro, but he's been in with some good names in the WSB and as an amateur. And I think Peter's the main man there, and the longer they keep Peter around, the better for Tyson.
Mm-hmm. Derek, Huey Fury, there's a few people think that he's going to go pretty far, maybe even supersede Tyson eventually. He seems to have the skills, and he took a tough fight there a few weeks ago.
Yeah, I didn't get to see that fight, Steve. But what kind of strikes me about Huey is you still can't believe how young he is. He's only 20 years of age, and he's the potential he's shown so far. I'm correct, and he's only 20, is he?
Yeah, as far as I know, he is. Yeah.
Yeah, like for someone so young, I think has he had 10 fights so far?
About 10 or 11 fights.
Yeah,
I think.
Like that potential for a 20-year-old, and it's limitless. So yeah, he could potentially surpass Tyson, like you say, but it's still early in his career. But for someone so young, I think there's limitless potential there, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think they'd ever fight?
I was actually thinking about that the other day, because potentially if Tyson did win a world title, and in a few years' time, if Huey was up there, would they clash at some point? I don't know. It's difficult. Could you fight your cousin in a professional fight? I suppose you could. They're not brothers. I've never seen. Have brothers fought each other before in a title
There was a
fight?
father and son fight, wasn't there, a few years ago? I remember Harry Doovan Jr. and Harry Doovan Sr. fought each other in Holland, and the son knocked the dad out. And this is true. Harry Doovan actually fought Mike Perez, the Cuban, once on one of Gary Hyde's shows down in Cork, if you remember. Well, he knocked his dad out in a fight about 10 years ago. But I'm not sure about the brothers. I don't know if any of the other guys know any more about that.
No.
No?
No, that's what I've never heard of brothers fighting each other, or but I'm sure cousins maybe have in the past. So yeah, it's definitely a potential somewhere down the line. It'd be interesting to see.
Mm-hmm. What do you think about Huey, Andy, or in relation to the likes of Anthony Joshua? I mean, where do you think Huey sits? And if you fought Joshua, who would you take to win that one?
Well, obviously off present form, and considering that Huey's coming off that illness, you've got to go with Joshua just now. I mean, he's obviously got a ridiculous amount of hype behind him as well. But just Kevin Johnson, I think he's been quoted as saying that Huey Fury punches like a horse kicks. So to be honest, I think not last weekend, but the weekend before, I think fighting the guys like Rudenko, it was a good step up and sort of class. Rudenko hasn't really fought anyone, in all honesty. I think he lost to Lucas Brown on points,
yeah.
So we can't really look too much. I mean, because Brown I do not rate. I think he's a 4-round fighter, but after that he's shot his bolt. But it's a step in the right direction. I really don't know where to go next. I'd like to see him just keep. Obviously he's come back off illness, so he needs to try and keep active, etc. But where he stands in the long scheme of things, I really don't know. I would probably say at present, Tyson Fury is probably the better prospect out of those two. Huey is definitely a work in progress. I don't know where he's going to sit, but I would probably say definitely maybe British title level. If is he eligible to fight for the British title?
As far as I know he is, yeah.
Yep, so definitely I would aim for the British title just now, because it doesn't seem to be that anybody seems to be wanting to fight for it. I don't think Tyson will maybe vacate that title. So Yeah, I think maybe British title level just now and see where he goes. But I'd like to see him more active again, get him back out every other couple of weeks, just keep him fighting. But certainly can I get a step up in class, maybe against a guy like Ustinov, maybe somewhere along the line.
Yeah, Ustinov would be a good one, and I think the British title would be a nice natural progression for him. Kenny, it's pretty lean times for the heavyweight division over in your part of the world at the moment. There's this sort of Eastern European domination, and I'm not sure how much you've seen of the likes of Tyson Fury or Anthony Joshua, but a lot of the big American heavyweights, they're just nowhere to be seen at the moment.
Yeah, and I think that's going to continue. Vladimir Klitschko is gonna blank Jennings probably within 5 rounds on April 25th, and Wilder has all the athletic abilities in the world for sure. He's got a hell of a overhand right. But beyond Wilder, honestly, it's slim pickings. As far as over across the pond, Tyson Fury, to touch on what was earlier said about him, his last 2 fights, I really felt that this fight against Hammer was sort of a continuation of the Derek Chisora fight. It looked like 8 more rounds of the same fight. You had him switching back and forth from southpaw to orthodox. I really like the one thing that sticks out the most to me about Tyson now in this sort of new form that we're seeing him in is his footwork for somebody as awkwardly built and awkward looking as he is. He looks like he should plot around like your uncoordinated giant uncle who just sits in the corner and grunts. But instead, he's actually very, very athletic and utilizes his footwork really well. Hughie Fury, on the other hand, I've only seen about a 5-minute YouTube highlight video on him, which pretty much showed him on the attack. So as far as his aggression and offense is concerned, I'm really impressed how he likes to throw the hook to the body. He's 20 years old, and I think that says a lot right there. So if he can keep that aggressive nature, if that is his, majority of his game, I think, wow. I mean, we do know that that's Anthony Joshua's. Anthony Joshua, I'm sticking by this until the guy can't walk anymore. I think Anthony Joshua will be the undisputed heavyweight champion within 3 years.
Jonny, would you agree with that? I mean, Anthony Joshua's certainly getting the big Sky build-up, isn't he? The big hype train, and I believe you've unearthed an Irish grandmother or something?
Yeah, Joshua and Dylan and White both have Irish grandparents, yeah. So we don't have to be up to when they fight. I think at the minute I'll take Joshua because he's most likely to win.
Yeah, I'd say so. No, Joshua's looking pretty impressive. I've been impressed with what I've seen of him. He seems like a fine physical specimen. I think, a lot of the problems that people have with him is maybe to do with the hype train, and that's been pushed along with him. And I know that they're sort of aiming towards the casuals when they're trying to push the Joshua thing. And I just saw Andy left a little message in the Skype. I don't think we'll touch on that one, Andy. I think we'll leave that one alone.
Definitely not.
We definitely will. But actually, there was one more subject I was looking to touch on with our guests before we move on to the more niche Irish stuff, which I'm sure you boys maybe won't be too interested in. But I mean, Jonny, actually starting with you, we were talking about this last week right on the end of the pod. It's the biggest fight in boxing. I know Andy's not going to thank me for mentioning this, but I'd like to get your guys' opinions, obviously, on the huge fight that's been announced for May the 2nd, Mayweather-Pacquiao, finally. Many of us will say that it's 6 years too late or so, but it's finally been announced. I mean, what's your opinions early on the big one?
Yeah, 6 years too late, but it's better late than never. And the build up to this fight and the hype and the press conference before it and so forth are going to be brilliant. You're going to have Mayweather trying to, trash talk and put Pacquiao down, and Pacquiao is going to be coming back with his usual. It's just business. I love you, man, sort of stuff, and it can only be good for boxing, and it's going to transcend and send boxing out to a wider market again and get people excited in boxing again. The problem possibly being that it probably won't be a great fight, so when people do tune in, they might be turned off again. I can't see it being an explosive fight, and I think Mayweather will win. I'd love to see Pacquiao win, to be honest, but I think Mayweather will win it.
If it's not going to be a great fight, Derek, and it's not going to be an explosive fight, what reasons do you think there are for people to maintain interest in it? I mean, is it the style matchup? Is it the fact that it's been built up for so long? We've got the two best fighters in the world of their sort of generation fighting at the same weight. I mean, where does the interest lie?
I think we just have to live in hope that one of these days a Mayweather fight will turn out to be an interesting fight, because, you know, every time I watch him, I hope that it's going to develop into, you know, some form of good kind of scrap and good fight. But, you know, Mayweather's defensive skills just turning into sometimes a bit of a bar fest, and I'm hoping it doesn't happen this time. But like, I'd echo Jonny's sentiments there. It can be only good for boxing because of the level of exposure this fight is gonna get, and it puts boxing back on the mainstream, even to the, you know, the non-boxing fans, the kind of casual observers. So in that sense, it is a good thing. You know, during those few weeks in the lead up to the fight, boxing will be kind of like the number one sport in the world because of the exposure it'll get. But again, I'd kind of echo Jonny's sentiments as well. If it turns into a boring fight, is that going to be to the detriment of the sport? And we just have to live in hope that it doesn't turn into one of those type of fights.
Kenny, do you think that the fact that Pacquiao brings something different to the table compared to the last few fights, styles that Mayweather's fought? You know, he's gone in against the likes of Maidana, Alvarez, Guerrero, Ortiz, all similar sorts of styles. He hasn't fought anybody recently like, say, a Zab Judah, for all his faults. Zab Judah was a very fast fighter, gave Mayweather a little bit of trouble early on. Shane Mosley gave him a little bit of trouble. Do you think that the fact that Pacquiao has this sort of southpaw, you know, he's elusive, or not as elusive as he was, obviously, do you think he's going to bring something different that will trouble Mayweather?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I had Brandon Rios on my show 2 weeks ago, and we talked about the fight when he fought Pacquiao, and obviously he's admitted time and time again about how he wasn't in the best mental or physical shape for that fight against Pacquiao, but he always described fighting him like being in the ring with an octopus. And the two things that completely threw him off about Pacquiao is that he punches a lot harder than you would ever imagine, and that he's much quicker than even he seems on TV, even at the age, you know, he'll be, I guess, 36 during the fight. Yeah, as far as what he brings differently is, you know, Zab Judah was exposed by Costa Tszyu, and I always felt after that fight, you basically saw another version of Adrian Broner, or, you know, these fast athletic guys. So, you know, the quick southpaw thing, I think, is definitely a factor in this. Mayweather cannot stay on the ropes like he did against Maidana, because if he does, he's going to get picked apart. If he skates the ring like Erislandy Lara, this will be a boring unanimous decision victory for Mayweather. But I will say this: I'm predicting, regardless of outcome, I think both of them are going to hit the floor on this one.
Wow, that's interesting. Andy, do you think that they're both going to hit the floor? Let us know as well your opinions for people who maybe haven't heard you venting on this fight before. Let us know what you think about it.
I know. As some will probably know, as I've banned all talk about it on our podcast. Because, I mean, how much more do we need to speak about it? It's been spoken about in forums, Twitter, everywhere for the last 6 years. You know, the written press. I don't believe anyone will hit the floor. It's maybe a more competitive fight now, seeing as that they're both slowed down, more so Mayweather, but I also believe that Pacquiao is more burnt out. If anything, Mayweather's got more left in the tank. Maybe I would think Pacquiao is slightly mentally affected by the Marquez knockout. He seemed kind of be more kind of refined in his boxing ability now. I just wonder if he doesn't start quick and Mayweather starts, you know, picking him apart in the first 5 or 6 rounds. Does he get desperate? Does he maybe jump into a shot that Mayweather maybe just kind of catch him with a lead right hand and maybe just knock him out? I know Mayweather's not a big puncher, but at the same time, as you know, he must punch hard enough to kind of have Victor Ortiz lying on the ground and all getting up. I mean, he's probably a quitter anyway, but to be honest, I still side with Mayweather. I picked Mayweather back in the day. I pick him now. I still think it'll be a close fight. 116, 112, 117, 111 along those lines. But I would love to see maybe Pacquiao turn the business, because this TBE nonsense that we keep hearing is starting to really grate on me. I mean, the fight had to happen to say that he's the best of his generation, but as the best ever, even winning this fight, I don't think Mayweather would even breach the top 20 of all time.
Hell no. Hell
You
no.
think you think he should? I don't think he should be top 20. No way. I think some people even argue that top 30 would be a push.
No, his style is the most contrived. His career is so maneuvered. Oh man,
definitely.
I mean, it's just I think anybody with two that can rub two sticks together would know that this guy has been the most well-conceived fighter maybe of all time.
Do you think, sorry Steve, do you think, Kenny, that he actually believes he's the best ever? I mean, when he's actually questioned on Sugar Ray Robinson, for instance, he doesn't really break it down in any great detail as to why he's not the greatest of all time. He doesn't seem to kind of break it. He says that he respects him, doesn't say that this is the reason why I'm better than Sugar Ray Robinson.
He is as narrow-minded as people come. He is a grand reflection of the people that root for him the dearest. They hang on one-liners that have no basis, that don't make any sense, and that's the way he thinks. He processes things based off of, if I say it, there's enough people out there that will just believe what I say. Perfect example of what you're saying is his insults towards Manny Pacquiao, right? He's got two lines. Pacquiao's got Marquez problems, right? That's his first line. And then his second line is that Pacquiao doesn't have any money. And that's it. He's been using the same exact lines for years. His knowledge of this sport is probably confined to the 5 red M&Ms set out in front of his locker before every fight.
His dad's the same. His dad's exactly the same. His dad keeps asking the same question. Where's Pacquiao's power going? That's an indication that he's stopped using PEDs or allegedly using PEDs. The thing is, as well, is if you look at the two fighters, Pacquiao is a very, very small welterweight. He's a light. He could probably make lightweight. Actually, he's actually a small welterweight. If anyone saw those two speaking on the basketball court, Mayweather actually dwarfed him. He's going to have the height and reach advantage in this fight as well.
Jonny, where do you think Mayweather sits in history? I mean, does he believe this TBE thing, or is it just the gimmick that we think it is?
I think maybe he does believe it, but I think when they're talking about it, it's like when people talk about the Premiership, Thierry Henry was the greatest striker of all time, and you don't go back before, I don't know, Ian Rush or, sorry Kenny, if you don't know what we're talking about. But it seems to be that sort of vibe about it, like as if he's discarding the whole history of boxing and TBE on the... He's nowhere near it, in my opinion, and as the boys will say, it's sort of contrived. Everything about him seems contrived, and even just the way he handpicks opponents, like it turns my stomach. Like that's probably the one thing about boxing, that you can't pin fellas down and make them fight certain people, because. And then every time you think, but in fairness, every time you think he's going to get a half decent test, or someone's going to push him, or I don't know if I just buy into the narrative every time, but then he produces them performances where he just can't be touched. So no doubt he's a talented boxer, but I don't think you can be anywhere near the best of all time unless I think you need a nemesis, a foe, someone who's pushed you. You've got to be in some great fights to show mettle, show heart, there's too many boxes that he doesn't tick.
Do you think, Derek, he put too much emphasis on the zero, just trying to preserve this zero, and he avoided a lot of the sort of big tests of his of the divisions?
Without a doubt, like, he definitely has avoided the big fights, like Jonny said. I don't think he ever wanted this Pacquiao fight. Or maybe he wanted to delay it long enough that he thought he would have a better chance of beating Pacquiao, but. This fight should have been done years ago when they were both at the peak of their powers, and Mayweather didn't want it back then. I think he is, looking to preserve that. And it's good marketing skills that have got him to, this TBE bullshit, because he's definitely not the best ever. There's so many more out there who were much better than him. But
who do you think could have given him a go, Steve, over the years? Like, what fights would you have liked to see him in that didn't happen? Not just even now, but previously, maybe.
I would have liked to have seen him fight the likes of Paul Williams. I think that would have been a good one. Andy, I think that was one that you fancied as well, wasn't it? The Paul Williams?
Yeah. Casamayor,
Freitas and Spadafora, when they were all around super featherweight. I'm not saying those guys would have beat him, but it just would have been nice to sort of clear out the division. Margarito, anybody? No?
Definitely Margarito, but just what you're going on saying about the zero there, Steve. I mean, as long as Floyd Mayweather has this zero on his record, he is always going to be able to put up an argument as to why he is the best ever. Unless Pacquiao beats him. And another thing, I said that a couple of weeks back. If Pacquiao beats him and does it royally, beats him, I don't think we'll ever see a rematch. In all honesty, I think mentally that might just zap everything out of Floyd Mayweather if he loses to Pacquiao after everything that's been said and done down the years. If he doesn't deliver on which is probably he's going to be his biggest stage and his biggest fight, if he doesn't deliver, then I think mentally we might not even see Floyd Mayweather back in the ring again.
What do you think his biggest win is, Andy, on his record? I mean, are we going De La Hoya or?
Yeah, you could say De La Hoya because it's a passing of the torch of shall we say the big star. But the other thing as well is the Mosley win's slightly underrated actually because obviously Mosley's coming off that great win of Margarito. Then obviously he was a year out of the ring, but I think he was to fight Bertone, and that was that tragedy over in Haiti, and that fight got cancelled. But another good win as well. It's one of my most favourite Floyd Mayweather performances is Diego Corrales. I mean that Floyd Mayweather was exciting to watch. But since then I couldn't really give a shit. I mean about Floyd Mayweather. I mean, see the Alvarez fight. I actually had to watch the Alvarez fight on 3 separate goes. I actually watched the flight on a plane ride over to Norway. I actually had to have 3 sittings of it because after 7 rounds I was bored. That fight alone was just absolutely, it was turgid to watch.
And you're getting frustrated, Andy, though, because no one can land on him, and you're up for his opponents as much as being bored, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I know what you mean, mate. But see, the other thing that's really, really annoying me, and the one thing we need about this fight coming up, we need a strong referee. I felt, if you look at the Hatton fight, Cortez was far too busy. And I rate Kenny Bayless as a good referee, but he was too much involved, I felt, in that rematch against Maidana. And yeah, right. I'm really annoyed that no one can actually kind of make him stand and fight because look at the Mosley fight. I really did think we were going to get something out of Floyd. He showed a great chin, great powers of recovery, but Mosley it just didn't have it in him just to kind of follow up on after hurting him like that. So it really is frustrating. And I don't want to sound like a Mayweather hater, which I probably am actually, but I really think he's got it in him. He has got it in him to actually show us a little bit more, a bit more exciting fight. He's very, very bitter about Pacquiao as being more loved in America. That's because Pacquiao's got a kind of American style of fighting, balls to the wall and go for it. I mean, that's how we love to see our fighters. I mean, I'm a big Duran fan. Duran would put his balls in the line and fight it out. He'd fight the best. He wouldn't bother about drug testing and, who's in his corner, etc. Duran wanted money and he wanted to fight, and he would do it.
He just wants to be loved, I think, Kenny. Do you remember back in the day whenever he was saying about the HBO slave contract and he was still with Bob Arum, and he went through this sort of phase when he fought the likes of, I think it was Victoriano Souza and all those type of guys, and they were saying he was boring to watch, and then he came out against Philip Ndu, the decent South African, and he just went for Ndu and knocked him out in about 7 rounds, and he looked as offensive, as impressive as he had in a long time. And we knew he had hand problems at the time, but he put it all on the line that night. Not that Ndu was any great shakes or anything, but he does have the capacity to be exciting. But I mean, do you think that he just wants to be loved, or he's just obsessed by money? I mean, what motivates this guy?
He's a very lonely individual. I think there's so much to be learned about Floyd Mayweather in the simplest things with him. Like if you just look at his shots account or like his Instagram account, he takes the loneliest, saddest pictures of himself, and it's just a man that surrounds himself with so much nonsensical, irrelevant things that I know I don't want to get too romantic on you guys, but I always relate this like the Pacquiao Mayweather comparison between the two as far as their mindsets coming into this fight is that Floyd Mayweather is so consumed with now and the tangible, and because of his lifestyle and his decision makings and his obsession, he is obsessive compulsive. Doctors would say his behavior is diagnosable as obsessive compulsive. It's this mentality and his issues with control and knowing that there can be if you are a religious guy or not, his lifestyle, there's nothing else, and you can't take any of these things with you. Pacquiao, honest to goodness, thinks that there's something beyond this life. He sees another day beyond this fight. I think that the biggest thing going into this, all the skills and whether you like the guys or not, is I just think that Floyd Mayweather will be his own worst enemy inside of his head. And those days of excitement, Pretty Boy Floyd died in the Oscar De La Hoya fight. And from that point on, he became the beast, the monster that he has built himself into today. And that, coupled with his hand problems, I do not see him physically able to be that fighter anymore.
I'll throw this one out to whoever wants to answer it. The Jose Luis Castillo fight, would that be correct in saying that is the closest we've ever seen Mayweather come to losing? Some people thought he lost. I didn't think he lost that fight. But I mean, is there anything, has he been troubled or in any other fight? Anybody want to jump in on that, Castillo? Or
how about his tooth flying out against Maidana in the last fight?
That's true. Or getting bitten on the hand.
Yeah, I mean, did you see him sitting down in the corner after that punch? I mean, he got spun around and didn't know where he was for a second, and he sat down and he started. These are the things you got to be concerned with. I mean, he sounded like Mike Alvarado in Rios Alvarado 3, sitting in the corner. I can't see. I can't see. I'm bleeding. I can't. It's like, dude, you got hit in the mouth, man. What do you mean you can't see?
He was starting to look a bit like an old man in there, a bit of a whinger, wasn't he, Kenny?
Yeah. And those are the things to look out for in this fight. I mean, that, like it's been said over and over again. I mean, we've all beaten this dead horse a million times, I mean, we're going to be looking at the little small things in this fight.
Mm-hmm. All right, lads. I suppose, I said before, we're going to move on to the Irish stuff. Very briefly, Andy, before we let you go, is there anything you want to say about the show this weekend? Thurman Guerrero, Broner Molina. I mean, what catches your interest on that one?
I think we were discussing last night, actually, that people are, especially at the bookies anyway, they're slightly writing off Robert Guerrero's chances. I think they've got Thurman at a 1-6 favourite. I think that's pretty wide, I think, considering. But I think Guerrero's certainly a live dog in the fight. It'll be interesting to see if he can draw Thurman into a good firefight. But I'm looking forward to the Adrian Cloner against John Molina fight. If Cloner's not on his game, actually, I would love to see Molina drop in that right hand. Or any sort of shot is going to put him down. But the one fight I'm really looking forward to would be Thurman against Guerrero.
What about you, Kenny? What are you looking forward to?
Yeah, I like. I think the Broner Molina fight's going to be exciting. I think that if Broner continues to stand flat-footed, that Molina has a puncher's chance. And then as far as the Guerrero Thurman fight is concerned, I think Guerrero is a pretty cerebral fighter in there. I know he didn't prove that against Kamagai, but he takes what you give him. And if Thurman tries to show too much bravado, I think Guerrero has a good chance in this fight.
Jonny, I'm picking Broner to beat Molina on points, but I think Molina might give him a bit of trouble because Broner's notorious for not living the life outside of the ring. I think he's a pretty talented guy. He has his flaws, he has his mouth. He's not the cleverest guy in the world, but he's reasonably exciting. We all loved seeing him get that beating against Maidana, though, didn't we? Let's be honest.
Definitely.
That was sexy.
Yeah, but you've said you've spoken to him pre all this flushing the money down the toilet, Steve, and he was a decent enough youngster at the time.
That's right. He was out when I interviewed him a few years ago before he hit the big time. I think he was about 14-0 at the time. He was okay. He seemed like a nice enough guy, but he's obviously just realised that being a nice guy or being a decent fellow isn't going to get you the big fights, and he's gone the trash talking route. I mean, do you see Molina giving him any trouble this weekend?
I would love to see Molina give him trouble, and I think it won't be a wide point decision for Broner, but I think Broner will have too much. I'm actually a lot more excited about the other fight. I think that's a cracking fight, and Longmore may continue to make these good fights. I think they're two good fights this weekend.
Derek, what about yourself? Thurman Guerrero, Broner Molina, or even Abner Mares, maybe a future Frampton opponent there?
I'm a big fan of Thurman. I like his style. I like his kind of all-action kind of style, and I think that could be a cracking fight. I'd love the Molina fight with Broner to develop into something like his fight with Matisse. That would be cracking. And like you say, yeah, Mares potentially. Did we hear he's going to super bantamweight or?
Apparently so, yeah. He's they were talking about him moving back down to super bantamweight. I think.
Were they saying Daenerys? No, I think they said at the press that Daenerys.
Oh, was it Daenerys that was moving down? Yeah, because there was a possibility of Frampton fighting Daenerys, maybe. So in Mares, they were talking about him fighting Santa Cruz. I think they said.
Okay, that's the one. Yeah. So yeah, Yeah, three really good fights on that. I think the one I'm really looking forward to is seeing Thurman again. I always like watching him, so that's the one I'm most excited about.
Kenny, Thurman's been made out to be this sort of big puncher, and he's going in against Guerrero, who's got form at world level. I mean, are you sold on Thurman? I'm not really that sold on him. I made the controversial comment last night on the Boxing Asylum podcast that I thought Broner would beat Thurman if they fought. Is that so controversial?
No, I don't think it's far-fetched at all. I mean, I think it's pretty clear that Adrian Broner possesses the tools to beat almost anybody within 140 to 147 pounds. It's just a matter of Broner's mental state. As far as Thurman's concerned, I think the one positive we learned in the Bundu fight was that we actually saw him, being forced to box by kind of a weird, awkward, come forward style. And, Guerrero's going to be there. As far as the hype with Thurman, though, I mean, I think he's got great power, and I think we're still learning about him. But yeah, there is certainly some hype that needs some substantiation behind it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm, definitely. Lads, before we close up, we're going to touch upon a few things. Feel free to stay on the line, everybody, or contribute or chip in if you want to. But this might get a bit niche now. Just closing off with a sort of Irish boxing side of the Irish Boxing Forum. Jonny, I was going to mention to you actually about Gary O'Sullivan, Spike O'Sullivan. He got a second round knockout win over Larry Smith there over the weekend, and we believe he's fighting again on March the 14th in Madison Square Garden.
I think Smith retired on a still and didn't come back out. Yeah, but he's out again then under Kenny Cunningham on the 14th. I'm sure that must be the same show that Pacquiao is on as well, Patrick Ireland. It's good to see Spike get sort of a run of fights, and I think Spike is in probably the best place he's been now. He's got like fights lined up. He's not waiting on last minute phone calls or taking last minute fights, and he's fit, he's raring to go, and he has a focus. But he's back to his old tricks calling out GGG and Chris Eubank Jr. this week. But like Spike, if he gets a good run of fights and he impresses the Boston crowd, we all know Spike can punch, and if he's in the right frame of mind, probably could move up the ladder and possibly even definitely possible get a shot against Chris Eubank Jr., which would be huge for us.
That would be a good fight. Andy, actually, you're a big fan of Spike, aren't you, I believe? I mean, you saw the knockout of Fitzgerald. He's obviously not going to fight Golovkin. That's just, nonsense, but he's just putting it out there. Well, he did call him out. I mean, I suppose be careful what you wish for, but I mean, he would be a good addition to the domestic scene. I mean, if you chucked him in with the likes of Eubank or Ryder or someone like that, he'd give him a good fight, wouldn't he?
Definitely. I mean, I think he would give him a good fight. I was just, believe it or not, I don't know if anybody's been following it, but I've been having a wee bit of a debate back and forth today with Lou DeBelloff. He's not happy with a printed article that got put out today, but I was actually speaking to Lou, and I've actually arranged to get tickets for a mate of mine who's actually going to New York on that weekend, so he can go and actually watch Spike. And is Paddy Highland on that card as well, I think?
It's the 14th, and then the Irish police force fight the American firefighters or something. It's that one.
Is that St Paddy's weekend as well?
Yeah, March 14th.
Big parade and that, a few Guinnesses, etc., a few Jamesons, or a few Sheridans, however you want to drink. But I like Spike. I was going to ask actually, did I actually catch the guy that threw the stool at him after the Fitzgerald fight?
No, it was. It
wouldn't be hard to catch, but he won't be caught, if that makes sense.
Well, I understand that one, mate. Yeah. I like Spike. I don't know what his plans are, if he's going to actually stay over there and maybe keep fighting. But yeah, I mean, I like to see him in with the likes of Eubank or. Well, I don't know if Saunders fight would happen actually, but yeah, I like to see him in with Eubank. I think he would give Eubank a good test actually.
Pascal said to me before all of this American stuff was announced that it was a possibility, that they'd already broached it, that if he'd won the title, that they'd be looking to put Spike in. Obviously, Frank likes to put some Irish fighters in to lose against his lad, so that's a possibility, I think. So, and it would be a good fight and be a good test for Eubank too.
I think the immediate plans for Spike, I listened to an interview with him with Steve Bunce, I think it was early last week, and he said the immediate plan is to fight the next kind of 4 or 5 fights in America. He obviously had the one during the week. He has the one this month on the 14th.
And then he's on a Danny O'Connor undercard as well, I think.
Yeah, so that's the kind of immediate plans is for the next few months as well.
I think David agreed that if the Eubank fight comes up, that he could take it.
Okay. Like the Eubank fight is massive for Spike, and the two of them have been calling each other out for, God, it seems like years now. And I think we've yet to kind of see Spike in a high level fight apart from Billy Joe Saunders, and he was obviously he didn't get to land on Billy Joe. Billy Joe boxed well that night and kind of gave him a run around. But you could see a fight with Saunders or with Eubank Jr. Sorry, the two of them standing toe to toe, and that developing into a bit of a war. And obviously, we've spoke to people before who have said that Spike punches like a mule. So it would definitely be a cracking fight to watch to see. The two of them are definitely big punchers. So it's debatable whether Chris Jr. would take the Spike fight. We know in the past that he's called Spike out and then waited until Spike has a fight confirmed and then kind of called him out again. And then when the Spike camp have said, okay, we'll fight you, he's always busy with there's always excuses there from the Eubank side. So maybe it's just bravado that they're calling Spike out, and Spike definitely wants to fight though.
Yeah, I'd like to see Spike. He's obviously got this deal over in America now. Just briefly, Jonny, is there anything you can fill us in? I mean, is he going to be staying there for the foreseeable future? It seemed after he knocked...
Let's just fight over there, I think, and train here. But as they were saying, there's 4 or 5 possibly lined up, but he'd most likely be allowed to take a Eubank fight if it came up. But he just has the perfect style, and even just the head on him, the Irish thing. He looks like Charles Bronson, doesn't he? At times, like it's mean man who's quick-witted and says what he thinks. So I think he'd be huge in America.
Mm-hmm. We're going to have a word with Alex Morris in a minute. He's come on to give us his opinion on Frampton Avalos. He's scathing views, no doubt there from Alex. But just in the meantime, Andy was just asking the question there. Derek, I don't know if you know about this one, about Haymon O'Kane's next plans. He got a knockout win there somewhere in England. Was it Swindon or somewhere like that under the Paddy Fitzpatrick reign? Do we know if Haymon's going to be coming back anytime soon or?
Sorry, Derek.
Yeah,
I was talking to Gary Hyde on Friday at the weigh-in, and he said that Ndam still hasn't got an opponent, and he thinks O'Kane is still in line. I think he's maybe
quite highly ranked, I think, isn't he?
Yeah, so he said that fight is still a possibility because he hasn't got an opponent for Ndam. I can't remember if he said to me it was right in the middle of the weigh-in, so I was kind of rushing. So I can't remember who he said was probably next in line. But you think so? One more fall through on O'Kane is next, which would be good news for us.
And Kenny, I don't know if you know about this one actually. And was supposed to be fighting. Was it David Lemieux for the IBF title? Is that off now?
The last that I heard was that they were that this new lawsuit that was coming down from Canada was going to try to stop the fight. But the last thing that I had heard was that Golden Boy was trying to secure this fight for the co-feature of Canelo Kirkland on May 9th.
Okay, fair enough. Alex, are you there?
Hello.
Yes, thanks very much.
Oh, he's got his mic working.
Yeah. It's good to hear from you, Alex. Alex, Frampton Avalos, give us your view of the weekend, just to go back to the Frampton Avalos fight. You were impressed with Carl, weren't you?
Yeah, I was very impressed. Obviously, I couldn't give my views on the our podcast the other night, but it's good to express them here. I was very impressed with Frampton on the night. I thought that he dealt with Avalos very well. Avalos, who was coming forward from the get-go, really. I mean, he went straight in for a bit of a tear-up, straight in to really just get under Carl's skin. I think we saw that in the weigh-in the day before, the bit of a push. There was scenes of him spitting or someone throwing chewing gum at him or something.
Mom, I think it was.
It was a week.
It's bloody disgusting, isn't it? But I think they were really trying to get under his skin, and I don't think it really worked. He was very composed, Carl was. He absolutely dominated the pace of the fight. He dominated the range of the fight. I mean, Al Bernstein was commenting about how Avalos, had a huge height advantage, had huge reach advantage. A lot of super bantamweights seemed to hold that over Carl, but he, as was shown, he controlled the range, he controlled the pace, and that was ultimately what won the fight. He just could tee off on Avalos at points. The right hand landed bang on the chin every time he threw it, and I thought the stoppage on the point of the stoppage was excellent. All of us have criticised Howard Foster at some point in the past. And you could see that Avalos was gone. You could see he was just completely throwing on instinct, basically. He's a tough man. He was winging the punches back just to, because he was still on his feet, basically. And if he took a couple more punches, I think that he would just basically be in the hospital. And I really enjoyed the fight. I think it really stamps my belief, certainly, and for a lot of other people, that Carl Frampton is the best super bantamweight apart from Rigondeaux. And, hopefully we'll see that in the future. That fight for me is certainly more important than the Quigg fight, because I believe Frampton is levels above Quigg now.
How far do you think the gap is between Rigondeaux and Frampton? I mean, it's certainly been closed, hasn't it? I mean, I'm not saying that Carl would even beat Rigondeaux at the moment, but I mean, the gap has narrowed a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I mean, a lot of people have always said that, it doesn't matter what really goes on between the guys below Rigondeaux, because they all lose emphatically to Rigondeaux. But I think that win there really, I don't think it, made people pick Frampton or would make them confident of beating Rigondeaux, but it certainly opened up the possibility. And I think Rigondeaux's last fight and the weaknesses he showed there, obviously he's weaker against bigger guys, and Amagasa was absolutely huge. He was about, I think he was 15, 20 pounds heavier on the night. It was absolutely ridiculous. Frampton would likely be a lot heavier as well, maybe not to the same degree as Amagasa was, but certainly he'd be packing the same amount of power, if not more power, same amount of strength. There wouldn't be any height or range disadvantages in that situation either that Carl usually faces. So I think there's definitely a chance. Even Rigondeaux at his peak was still cracked on the chin by Nonito Donaire. I think Carl Frampton could certainly, land some of his best punches. It's just whether or not he can land enough to do the job.
Where do you think Leo Santa Cruz fits into all this, Alex? Do you think that Santa Cruz has just become irrelevant in the whole, the Quigg, Frampton, Rigondeaux conversation? Should we just sort of count him out now? Is he going to move up in weight?
Yeah, I couldn't really give a toss about him anymore, to be honest. I hope he pisses off to 126 and fights another waste of space, Abner Mares. Both of them have just... Abner Mares, I said about him, the Jonny Gonzalez fight, that should have happened by now. Leo Santa Cruz, they're just waiting to cash him out, I think. No interest in fighting Rigondeaux, no interest in fighting Frampton, no interest in fighting Quigg. So he can piss off. People should stop wasting their time, I think. I mean, he's fighting sparring partners, for God's sake. Fuck him.
Who really believed that anyone was even going to think about paying him $3 million to fight Rigondeaux? Seriously, exactly. at 122, never going to happen. No, in this day and age.
You can't, Jonny, generate that type of money down at those weights, can you? I mean, if one fighter's getting $3 million, how much is Rigondeaux going to be getting? I mean, is he going to ask for parity within that? And you're going to try and make $6 million, dollars to pay the pair of them? I mean, it's unrealistic, isn't it?
Yeah, not a hope. But I still would love to see Frampton fight Santa Cruz because it's his gateway to America. But as Frampton said during the week, there's not a hope that he doesn't think Santa Cruz would even fight Quigg.
If Santa Cruz is the gateway to America, but we can't make the Santa Cruz fight, and Frampton it ends up on an American undercard to try and make the crossover, Kenny, who would you like to see Frampton fight to sort of introduce himself in person to the American fans?
Man, I don't really... At 122, oh man, there's just nothing really there that would get anybody really interested. It would have to be Santa Cruz. I mean, somebody coming down from 126 or coming up from 118, I guess. But, off the top of my head, nothing makes sense around those weight classes in the States right now. I mean, I've said it on my show yesterday. I would pay top dollar right now if they fought, if it was Frampton and Rigo at Madison Square Garden. I think, believe it or not, I think it couldn't happen this next fight, but if there were a couple fights in between to help both of their promotions along the way, I think that fight could be a co-feature at Madison Square Garden for sure.
Yeah, because I'm looking down the ratings there, and there doesn't seem to be anybody that even jumps out at me who they could put him on with. And
what about Nonito Donaire? I mean, he is going back down to 122, isn't he?
They mentioned him at the press conference as well on Sunday or Saturday night, early Sunday morning, possibly.
He's jumped so far back to the conversation around here. It's so easy to forget about him nowadays.
Yeah.
Well, I mentioned it earlier, actually. I mean, I don't know if anybody wants to jump in on this, but I was saying that if Frampton were to fight Donaire, I mean, is there a chance that people would look upon it as, like I said before, Rigondeaux's chewed meat? You know, the way he's supposed to be fighting Rigondeaux, but he's going for the guy that Rigondeaux schooled. I mean, would that be a black mark against Frampton, or does Donaire still hold enough, you know, gravitas at world level to be a, reputable opponent?
He just got KTFO, man. That's a big issue to his rep around here. I mean, people are on the gravy train with Nicholas Walters and Vasyl Lomachenko right now. That's all the talk around those weight classes, because you have the clown Mares and the little scaredy cat Santa Cruz, so it makes things difficult. I think Donaire still carries some weight, but he's got to prove that he can last an entire fight and that he can actually still box, because he's going for the one punch and it's not serving him well. I think Frampton, it's a dangerous fight in some regards because he does have that one hook, but at the same time, I mean, I think Frampton just knocks him out, man.
I think it's, if we're talking about a gateway fight into America, the Donaire fight is perfect because I think Frampton beats Donaire, and if you can have that on a high-profile undercard somewhere, you know, that's the announcing of Frampton onto the American market there, and then potentially building it towards a big Rigondeaux fight afterwards. So yeah, if we're looking at a gateway fight, that's the perfect fight for him, probably.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, that would be a good fight. Alex, you said you're not interested in the Quigg fight at all, but Jonny and Derek were saying earlier they have off a good source that it looks like Quigg is, the negotiations are moving on a little bit, so maybe in September or something in Manchester, that one could be getting close to being made. I mean, that doesn't excite you, no?
It excites me, but I don't think it's the fight anymore. I don't think that it should be hyped up as it has been. I think Frampton's just moved on to such a level that it's just going to be a complete blowout, and Frampton's just going to either completely school him or knock him out. A year ago it made a lot more sense when both of them were on this sort of fringe world level, but now Frampton's actually got his title. He's made a very significant first defence of it. He's levels above Quigg now. Quigg, who's been fighting the same trash for about a year and a half now. He's on the sidelines with an injury. It's not always his fault. His promoters aren't willing to pay the money or get the right opponents over for him to make a mark, and that's simply because they're waiting to cash Quigg out against Frampton. And to be honest, they're not going to be interested either way what I think about the fight, because they're just cashing Quigg out, in my opinion. And as soon as they do that, they'll be fine with it. They'll let Quigg go on, with his business as soon as he gets knocked out of Frampton, and I don't think we'll see that much more of him. Maybe we'll see him in with Rigondeaux. Yeah, we'll see him in the chip shop. We'll see him in with Rigondeaux maybe, but I don't think we'll see him headlining any sort of any more significant fights.
Sitting pretty at number 15 in the IBF rankings is Kid Galahad. I mean, where does he fit into the equation? He's obviously seems to be a rung below everybody else, but I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say even Alex he's a rung below the likes of Quigg. It's just maybe he hasn't got the platform, and the Hennessy and Channel 5 just isn't pushing him into the big fights. I mean, would you say he'd give Quigg a good run for his money, and is he anywhere near Frampton?
Yeah, I mean, I've been quite a critic of Galahad's before, but, he's impressed me a bit more lately as well, and, Quigg's obviously gone down, in my estimation, fighting this sort of garbage that he has been fighting. So, I quite like that fight. I think that fight, again, Frampton against Rigondeaux and Quigg against Galahad are far more exciting fights to me and far more interesting fights to me right now than Frampton and Quigg. Obviously, the hype and the build-up of Frampton and Quigg will be probably far more interesting than the other two, but from a perspective of 50-50 fights and where the winner goes after each one, then those fights are better. I think Galahad really does give Quigg a lot of trouble. I think that a slick boxer who's going to, a solid amount of footwork is going to give Quigg trouble. Someone who's not going to stay still. Quigg likes to get in there. He likes to stick his body shots into dig right in, and I don't think he'll be able to get in there, and I don't think he'll be able to catch up with Galahad that easily, and it'll be very telling if he manages to do that.
Mm-hmm. Jonny Stapleton's away. Jonny, are you gone?
Just leaving now. He's kicking me out, Steve.
Thanks very much. Jonny Stapleton, editor of IrishBoxing.com, at Johnny Hips on Twitter.
Yeah, but Don't really use it, although Derek tells me I should. I'm always on the Irish Boxing One instead.
Thanks very much, Jonny.
Enjoy, boys. Take care.
Yeah. See you, Jonny.
Right, Johnny.
We've got Kurt Ward, I think, on. Kurt, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Kurt. Thanks for coming on. This is Mr. Boxing
worries.
Asylum. Kurt Ward's in the house. Kurt's a big Scott Quigg fan. He's come on to defend Scott. He's a bit angry. He's a bit angry about the grief that we're giving him. And what round did you say Quigg was going to knock Frampton out, Kurt?
I don't like these despicable lies.
What do you think about the potential Quigg-Frampton fight, or even Frampton on Saturday night there?
Well, yeah, I mean, Frampton was really impressive. I mean, he was sharp, he was accurate, he looks really quick as well, and you know, you could see that he wanted to do a job on Avalos for the build up and the trash talk, but he did it in a measured way. You know, he didn't just load up and make stupid mistakes. He picked his shots, and you know, he's shown more aspects of his game. I think, to me, he's shown that he's levels ahead of Scott Quigg, and to me, you mentioned Galahad. That fight is really more on Scott Quigg's level, in my opinion. Yeah, Quigg's got a better record right now, but he's not fought really anyone, in my opinion, and Galahad hasn't been given the chance yet. That fight is a lot more interesting to me than a Frampton-Quigg fight right now, and that's because Frampton is just ahead of him, in my opinion. It's like Frampton and Rigondeaux. Yeah, Rigondeaux would be the favourite, but to me that gap is closer than Quigg and Frampton. The fight happened a year ago, 2 years ago. They're both around the same level. I think we yet to see them, really elevate themselves. But now, Frampton just gets better every time, I think. And Quigg, I've said it before, the one guy he's faced that was supposed to be a test, he drew with, and that guy was no good, in my opinion. And he's been handed a bogus bout, and that somehow makes him relevant to some people. Take the bout away from him and just look at his record. To me, there's not much there. He's got a lot of fights, and he hasn't really beaten anyone or proved himself. That's not to say he can't, but at the moment he hasn't, in my opinion.
Gary Hyde said last night, Kurt, that he was going to try and put a spanner in the works of Frampton Quigg by, maybe you could relay this a bit better than me. He was going to try and push the WBA to force a Rigondeaux Quigg fight. Was it something along those lines?
Yeah, because Rigondeaux is the WBA super champion and Quigg is the WBA. He's the regular now, isn't he? So they become like they have a mandatory situation, I think, every 18 months. We saw it last year with Klitschko and Povetkin, where both guys hold the same belt basically, and they have to fight each other. And I think Gary said he wants to force that fight. He doesn't believe that the Frampton fight will happen. He doesn't believe Barry McGuigan wants it. To be honest, I think he's never said anything about Frampton not wanting the fight, but he believes it's Barry that's putting the spanner in the works, stopping that one. And with Quigg, he hopes they can force it. He doesn't want Quigg to vacate the regular title. He wants them to take on Rigondeaux. But he believes that if they force it, that'll probably be what happens. And I think that'll be what happens. And he thinks that by vacating his WBA regular title, Quigg will look, well, he'll look a bit of a joke, to be honest, vacating that title, because he doesn't want to face Rigondeaux. And it makes his credibility go way down, even if they still make the fight with Frampton.
Mm-hmm. Derek, just briefly here, actually, from a local perspective, what caught your eye on the undercard? I mean, it wasn't the strongest undercard in the world, was it? I mean, we were talking to Marco McCulloch, actually, afterwards. He's the WBO European featherweight champion, and he was saying he wanted to move up to world level, but he was laughing himself when we were talking about Lomachenko being the WBO champion. And he rightly said, that he sort of wouldn't be rushing into a fight like that. I mean, Marco impressed, but he wasn't up against much. I mean, was there anybody who caught your eye really on the undercard?
Yeah, Marco obviously was coming back from injury, and the guy he was fighting looks like they pulled him out of a pub up the road. Marco hurt him with the first punch, and then I think he took him out of there within 1 minute and 9 seconds of the fight. You can't really judge anything on Marco on that fight, and he's been out of the ring for 5 months, so we'll wait to see. He did say to me afterwards he's hoping to headline his own show, maybe in the Waterfront or somewhere like that in Belfast in around April or thereabouts, so we'll see more of Marco then. Then Anthony Kakasha looked impressive, but Anthony told us afterwards as well he hurt his hand in the second round of his 6-round fight, so he couldn't really load up on the guy, but still looked impressive in his win. And then I'm trying to think what other Irish fights were on there. Paddy Gallagher, I thought, was before Carl. Obviously, was the performance of the Irish fighters of the night. It was only a 4-round bout. I'm not sure if that one was on ITV4 because it was leading up into the Carl fight.
I don't think it was, Derek. No, I don't think it was.
Yeah, it's disappointing because Paddy, as I said, I said to him afterwards, it was from my perspective the performance of the night thus far up until the Carl fight. He was really impressive in what he did. He boxed really well. So yeah, that one kind of stood out. I think it was probably from an atmosphere perspective inside the arena was a bad idea to have Dillian White and Vassell on before Carl because there was no local interest in those fights and everybody kind of just spilled out of the arena out to the bars, and it probably looked really poor on TV because there was nobody inside the arena. But it's obviously, and I think Kenny alluded to that in his podcast, saying like there was nobody in the arena just before the Carl fight. But then when Carl came in, obviously it was full to the rafters and the atmosphere was excellent. So yeah, it wasn't the best undercard that I've seen. It probably wasn't even close to the best, but impressive enough performances by the guys that were on there. They did what they needed to do.
Kurt, you were mentioning the viewing figures there. Actually, I think was it 1.9 million or something that
I think it peaked at 1.9 million. I think I was just wondering what you all made of that. Good or bad or?
I think if you add that 1.9 million was the ITV figures in Britain, but I think if you add the UTV, which is like the Irish version of ITV, there's another 500,000 to go on to that, so 2.4 million. I must admit, I kind of, that's still a massive number, 2.4 million watching a fight, but I expected it to be slightly more for some reason. I don't know. I think I had an idea before when Fury fought on Channel 5. Was that 5 million that watched that one, or am I totally picking that number out of my head?
I think the first fight which you saw, which got quite a big build-up, that got around 3 million viewers. That was the best they did, but after that they went down gradually, didn't they? But that did get a big build-up, and it was a heavyweight fight.
So, like I suppose 2.4 million is like quite a massive number to be watching a fight, but with the likes of free-to-air television, it doesn't get the same amount of exposure as a Sky fight, insofar as Sky News can kind of pump 24-hour news and build up a fight. But I think ITV done a decent enough job with their. Didn't they show a lot of kind of the day of the Jackal build-up stuff? So you're kind of limited with terrestrial TV and free-to-air TV in the amount that you can build up a fight, but 2.4 million is not too bad. I think that's a good starting point, and especially if like Barry was saying the other night, I think it's unrealistic that ITV, but Barry wants the next fight against Quigg to be on ITV. I think that's unrealistic. I think it's going to be a pay-per-view fight on Sky, but if it was on ITV, I think you would see a vastly bigger number than 2.4 million watching a Quigg and Frampton fight.
Do you think it'll end up on Sky, Alex, or do you think ITV has a chance?
It's probably going to be on Sky, innit? I mean, they're just going to stick out the fact that the fighters will make more money. It's a bigger cash out at that point, and they're not thinking of the future. It's how much can they earn for that single fight. It's unfortunate, really. I mean, the viewing figures, I expected them to do a bit better, but it's still extraordinary considering where boxing is at this moment. Especially a non-heavyweight title fight, you rarely get anyone interested in boxing, especially the lower weights, the smaller guys. No one's interested. And no one's really heard of Frampton outside of the boxing hardcores, I suppose. As much as we, it's always said that we live in our little bubble, I suppose, and we think, Frampton, he's a very popular name now, but Joe Publix doesn't know who he is yet. But I think if, they keep fighting on ITV, people are going to know who these people are. The viewing figures, it made me laugh. Someone posted earlier, I think, this fight did 2.5 million, or just under 2.5 million, or 2.3 million, or whatever you want to call it. Golovkin's fight did around 700,000, 800,000. And Brian Rose's fight against Carson Jones did 63,000 on Sky. So, Sky's viewing figures aren't always up to crack. So, it's the fact that it's pay-per-view, and I think they will really have to stack that card to make it worth the pay-per-view money. As I don't think a lot of people do know who Scott Quigg is for certain, and even Carl Frampton. I think they're going to have to stack it up with the big names, James DeGales, George Groves, that sort of thing, just to get the real interest in it. And to be honest, as I said, the best thing for both the fighters certainly is to get the names out there on ITV or in terrestrial television. But if they just want to interested in making money, then obviously they've got to go the pay-per-view route.
Definitely. Lads, we're starting to get towards the 2-hour mark, maybe just hit it actually, so I'm going to start wrapping things up actually. But before I do so, if I could just go around the table to each person, starting with you, Derek, put you on the spot there. Just regarding Carl Frampton, just this time next year, where would you like to see Frampton? Where do you think he will be? I mean, the rest of the year, go this date next year, ideally, where do you think Frampton will be, and where would you like him to be?
Where I think he'll be is possibly on the verge of a Rigondeaux fight. That's where I think he'd possibly be. Where I'd like him to be is have fought Quigg, beat Quigg, get the Santa Cruz fight, which I don't think will happen, but I would like to see it just because I think it would boost Carl's reputation in America to beat, even though I think a lot of people have seen through Santa Cruz, if he beat him over there in America, I think Carl would be at superstar status at that stage, and then to go on and fight Rigondeaux. But there's a lot of ifs and buts in there. I think he definitely will fight Quigg. I think that makes the most sense. I think Carl wants the Rigondeaux fight, so I think by this stage next year, he'll either be on the verge of it or it'll be happening around this time next year.
Personally, I would love to see the Quigg fight happen around sort of June time, and then a Rigondeaux fight happen around October or November time. That would be my preference. But what the cynic in me says that he'll fight Quigg, but that might be the only fight he has for the rest of the year, with a long period of inactivity, either before the Quigg fight eventually getting signed or after the Quigg fight. Because we've seen before, the boxing politics just tends to get in the way all the time, and I can see the Quigg fight happening, but either nothing or maybe a lesser voluntary defence or something happening, and then still be talking about Rigondeaux this time next year. But I hope that doesn't happen. Andy, what about you?
I'm pretty much in agreement as to what Derek's saying there. Now, see, the thing is, I also agree with what you're saying, Steve, about the inactivity. He's 28 years old now. He's in his prime, and for a guy that age and at that weight, the prime doesn't last that very long, in all honesty. I think the Quigg fight will probably happen next. I don't think they want to leave the money sitting on the table for too long. Where I would like him to see fight next would probably be, definitely Quigg, but then after that it's got to be Rigondeaux. If he doesn't fight Rigondeaux after that, I think he's going to get a lot of shit off a lot of people, and it's already starting just now amongst a certain hardcore element fans and that who are actually giving him shit. I wouldn't say Frampton specifically. I think his team isn't really helping him some sort of way. I know there's Gary High saying that he's been protected, Frampton would take the fight, etc. But I can't see it. If it doesn't happen this year, I don't see it happening at all. Gary Hyde doesn't believe it will happen. The Santa Cruz fight, unless they're going to pay $1 million to get him over to Ireland, he'll need to travel for that fight. So Quigg, then probably, I don't know, maybe Jesse Magdaleno or Shingo Wake maybe as an IBF title defence. I think that's what's going to end up happening as well. But I can't see the Rigo fight happening this year. If it doesn't happen this year, then it's got to happen by the first 6 months of next year, or it's never going to happen.
Kurt, on to yourself. What are you thinking? I believe you have a question to throw out as well.
Yeah, well, I was just going to ask you and Derek. How do you think the Irish fans who support Frampton would react if the Rigondeaux fight doesn't happen for whatever reason? We've seen Santa Cruz get a lot of criticism in America. Scott Quigg has been getting criticism in England. Will they continue to support him and just say, well, we can understand why that fight won't happen? Or do you think some will say no, because obviously the Irish fans are knowledgeable fans, they know Rigondeaux, they know all about him, and will they start saying, no, we want to see you tested against this guy, win or lose, we want to see you going against the best guy in the division?
Mm-hmm.
I think you might get a small fraction who would say that, but I think the kind of fan base that Carl has is like a kind of a football support who would, support him through thick and thin. So
Crusader fans.
Sorry?
Crusader fans.
Yeah, well, yeah. They're they'll support him through thick and thin, and I don't. If the Rigondeaux fight doesn't happen, I think there'll be excuses made on on why it doesn't happen, and which will put it in the opposite camp rather than Carl's camp. And Carl's fans will probably accept that. So I think you'll have a tiny fraction of boxing fans who may criticise Carl if that doesn't come off. But Carl has said that he wants the fight. So I don't know whether they would criticise Carl himself, because he has said he's the one who wants the fight.
Yeah, I would agree with Derek, actually. I think there is a smattering of people on Facebook, actually, at the moment, on my Facebook at least, who've been commenting on a few of the group forum discussions, who are asking questions. There's quite a few people who are friendly with Gary Hyde and that, who have been asking the question for a long time. And it seems to be a common theme now whenever people are discussing Frampton. About 4 or 5 comments in, someone does bring up Rigondeaux's name. Even when I'm discussing it on Twitter, people are bringing up Rigondeaux's name. And I had a bit of a crossover moment in work today, actually. I was talking to a guy who used to box many years ago in one of the clubs in Belfast, and he wouldn't be a hardcore fan. He sort of watches it on the telly and keeps an eye on things, knows Jerry's story and that. And he actually said to me today, I was reading in the paper about this guy from Cork, obviously Gary Hyde, and he has the Cuban Rigondeaux, so Frampton has to fight him next because he's the number one in the division. And that was a sort of a crossover moment. It sort of passed over to the sort of less than hardcore fans are starting to cotton on to the Rigondeaux situation and trying to, starting to think, oh, hang on, this guy is obviously the real deal. Frampton should be fighting him. And don't forget, Rigondeaux fought over here in 2001 in the Odyssey in Belfast in the World Championships. Everybody saw him in action there as well. So they do have knowledge of him. He knocked out Willie Casey in Dublin, Derek, obviously. We're at that one, and so people do know about Rigondeaux, and with the Gary Hyde
amateur championship as well. He won in Ireland as well.
Yeah, exactly. So everybody knows about Rigondeaux and the Cuban connection. So I think the sort of Frampton hardcores will turn a blind eye, but I think people are starting to cotton on to Rigondeaux. So yeah, I think there will be a little bit of a backlash, but maybe not a huge one. And Kurt was saying there about Gary Hyde. I don't know what you think, Gary, but. Derek, sorry. Gary Hyde, would he be a well-known figure? In the boxing circles he would, but outside of that, maybe not.
Yeah, only amongst boxing people, I think, and people who are kind of knowledgeable, because at the end of the day, he's Rigondeaux's manager. How many, non-knowledgeable boxing fans know a boxer's manager? You might know the boxer, but you don't know who his manager is, so... he wouldn't be extremely well known outside of boxing circles with the casual fan. So how much weight it holds, I'm not too sure.
Mm-hmm. Kurt, did you tell us what you think about Frampton's plans, where he'll be in a year's time?
Well, I think that the Quigg fight will probably happen. I mean, it should happen if they both want it. It's a big enough fight. I mean, I can see the egos of Barry and Eddie maybe making it drag on for a bit, but you'd surely common sense will prevail in that one, and it'll happen. And I think, like I said, Frampton will beat him, and I don't see him having issues with that. And I can see him, defending his titles against maybe lesser guys for a bit. I don't see the Rigondeaux fight happening. I agree with Gary Hyde, who doesn't see it happening. I don't see why they'd fight him, to be honest. And I think that's the same with Quigg and Santa Cruz. They won't go near him. And yeah, like I said, I'd like to see the Rigondeaux fight happen. I think win or lose, you'll get respect from everyone, and I can see why they would want to swerve it. But I think, boxing fans in the end, they want to see the best fight the best, and I think we want to see that fight. And like I said, I think Frampton has a much better chance now than he did maybe when the people were talking about it a year ago. And what's the worst that can happen? If he gets a win, he gets experience and huge respect, and beats the best guy in the division. If he loses, he still comes away as credible, like the other guys who fought Rigondeaux.
Yeah, Alex, I think Kurt summed it up perfectly there. I mean, what has he got to lose, really, against Rigondeaux?
Well, this is the same for everyone, really, in the division. No one's got anything to lose, really, against Rigondeaux, apart from, that O. And unfortunately, that seems to be a very big issue in boxing these days. Is the top 4 guys in the division all are undefeated, but none of them are fighting each other, and it's disgraceful. But really, on the topic of Frampton, he's in a position now where he's got to go for it. He's got to, he's at probably the peak of his career, and Rigondeaux is coming off of I wouldn't say a bad win, but certainly an eyebrow raising win, and this is the time for him to attack. This is the time for him to capitalise on all of the hype behind Frampton, to get out there and just make a name for himself. Even if he loses every single round, as long as he gives it a bloody good go, then I think people will still support him wholeheartedly. And I think this year, I hope he takes that fight. I hope he takes that fight before the Quigg fight. Obviously, if he loses it, that makes the Quigg fight a bit more difficult to negotiate. Obviously, he won't have his title. He won't have his O. You know, the smugness of Eddie Hearn and the rest will make that fight even more difficult. But I think for his career, he's got to make it. Got to get it done. What I think will probably happen is the Quigg fight in the summer. I quite agree that he might just take the rest of the year off if he wins that, and he wins that comfortably. Who knows? Maybe we'll see a November-December fight. Probably an easier fight. An RBF. Top 15, basic defence. And we can hopefully look forward to Rigondeaux early next year.
Would definitely love to see that one. But lads, I think we're going to close things up now actually, but I'd like to extend a huge thanks obviously to all the guys who've come on tonight. We've had the Boxing Asylum lads have jumped on and given us a great boost. I'm sure Derek will concur. We've had some great
aiming for world domination, so I take over the whole podcast. Merge it with Boxing Asylum.
No, it's great that you've come on. Derek, irishboxing.com. You're the main man, the videographer in chief. What's going on at the website at the moment, and where can people find you on Twitter?
Well, obviously the boxing, the website irishboxing.com. It's fairly hopping at the moment because we still haven't finished off our work on Frampton week. We call it. It's not even fight night. It's a full week's work for us. We still have videos to get up there, and there's so many kind of follow-up interviews and everything like that on there. You can always find me on Twitter at Derek McKenna. And then I guess we're just looking forward to now in a few weeks' time the next Irish show up in Andersontown in Belfast for James Tennyson's Celtic title fight. That's next for us, but we're still fairly busy at the moment.
Excellent stuff. That's great. Andy, as well, extend my thanks to you for coming on. I really appreciate it. Where can people read? No problem. Where can people read your work and get in touch with you?
You can get me on Twitter at AndyP792. I'll just leave it at that just now because after today's, I was actually hoping for a quiet day today, but it just seems to have went batshit mental for some reason.
Fair enough. We'll put that in the show notes. If anybody wants to give Andy grief, you can find him on Twitter there. Kurt, what about yourself?
Yeah, I'm at Boxing Asylum under the name Mayweather-47-1.
Mayweather-47-1. That's a discussion for another day. Alex, what about yourself, man?
I'm at KTC Boxing. I moan a lot and I chat shite, so probably don't follow me.
Fair enough. And thanks to Jonny as well, Jonny Stapleton, editor of irishboxing.com. Jonny had to jump off early, so thanks very much. And Kenny Keith as well.
Kenny as well.
Yeah, definitely Kenny Keith. He's at the boxingrant.com. Kenny, a lot of good stuff from Kenny. I'm sure you guys will agree. He spoke very well, and I'd never met him before, but thanks for putting him on, Derek. And he's on Twitter at Kenny Keith Jr. So definitely get Kenny on again to give us his thoughts and opinions. I'm Steve Wellings. For those of you who don't know me, you can find me on Twitter at Irish Box Review. And if you go over to irishboxingreview.com, you can download all 4 books, or you can buy them from Amazon if you want. So good luck with that. Thanks very much, everybody, for listening to the Irish Boxing Forum. Hopefully be up on iTunes, SoundCloud, YouTube, all the usual places. And if you want to get in touch, add me, steve.wellings, on Skype, and we'll have another discussion, maybe not next week, but the week after. Thanks, guys. All the best. Cheerio.